Okay, good afternoon, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on the final day and for the final panel of our 3-day conference. I am Marcus Goff. It's my pleasure to welcome you again to this panel that focuses on the protection of Caribbean popular music. As you will see, we have a lineup of several distinguished speakers this afternoon, and we have made it, of course, a regional panel to reflect the topic this afternoon. What we will be looking at is how can we protect Caribbean popular music, and what does it mean for us to protect our culture, and how. Our speakers are Mrs. Candace Westby Fisher. She is the Deputy Registrar and Crown Counsel in the Belize IP office. To her right is Mr. Regan Mark Asgarali, Legal Officer in the Ministry of Legal Affairs and also from the Trinidad and Tobago IP office. To his right, Dr. Dennis Howard, we have Dr. Donna Hope-Marquis, Director and Senior Lecturer in the Institute of Caribbean Studies and the Reggae Studies Unit, UE, as well as Ms. Lydia Rose, the General Manager of JACAP, Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors and Publishers. So please help me to welcome our guests this afternoon as we proceed to start this panel discussion. I'd like to first introduce our first speaker. It's a long list of speakers. We're going to try to keep each speaker to a tight time limit so we can have as much discussion from the audience. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Candace Westby Fisher. Mrs. Fisher is a national of Belize. She worked as a language arts teacher in the capital city, Belmopan, before going on to UE, where she studied for the Bachelor of Laws at UE Caville in Barbados. She went on to do her legal certificate at the Norman Manley Law School here in Jamaica and was there awarded the Pitts and Elrington Prize for the most outstanding final year Belizean student, as well as the Belize Bar Association Prize for the most outstanding Belize student over the 2 years at the Norman Manley Law School. When she left the law school, she was appointed Crown Counsel and Deputy Registrar of IP of the Belize IP office, where she currently serves as the manager of the office and staff, as well as a legal advisor to the government of Belize on IP issues. She's also the legal editor of the IP Journal, the website, and other publications of the Belize IP office. Please let me to welcome then Mrs. Candace Westby Fisher.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to be presenting on a very specific topic this afternoon, and it has to do with our popular music in Belize, which is called the Punta music, and it comes from the ethnicity of the Garifunas. I'm going to keep it short and just speak on what it was like to get the Garifunas recognized as a UNESCO. They were recognized in 2001, placed on the UNESCO Masterpiece of Oral and Intangible Cultural Heritage, and that's what I'm going to be speaking to. And I also have a short 3-minute video from a film produced by Miss Nea Shaleng to let you know what is Punta music, because I think a lot of people might not be aware of what it is. So, Garifuna music, first of all, the most famous Garifuna music is called Punta music. And from the Punta music, you also have the Punta rock. Punta music, first of all, is basically just 2 drums. That's the traditional Punta music. And you have a bass drum, and then you have a second smaller drum that is used. So it's just drumming and very traditional. And what we have is that over the years, Garifuna, different persons in the culture decided to develop the music further and modernized it and electrified it by adding guitar, and that's what we call the punta rock music. And then you also have the more harmonized traditional music where a Garifuna person sings while the drum is being played, and that's called paranda. While the video is loading, just to give you a history of who the Garifunas are, they first started in St. Vincent. They call St. Vincent Eurome in Garifuna, and they migrated from St. Vincent to Belize in the 1700s. They are a mix of Arawak, Carib, and West African.
Central America, across the country of Belize. It's called the punta, and its heartbeat is the Garifuna drum. Let the rhythm take a hold of you. It will call you to your feet. It will call you to your roots.
Is credited for the origin of Caribbean culture, where Africans, Intermarriages, native Caribs and Arawaks didn't realize this new hybrid military Westby.
It has been over 200 years since our exile from St. Vincent. That land war, that final land war that resulted in our expulsion. And somehow we have managed to survive as an identifiable group of people.
It's a story of a very resilient people. Music has been the lifeblood, really, because music, our entire cosmology would have been destroyed. Our intimate connections to each other would also vanished. So music has held us together.
So here you have a short clip from the Punta Soul film. It was actually directed and produced by Ms. Nia Shalang, who's the former Deputy Registrar of the Belize Intellectual Property Office. And what you see there is that the music is what has held the culture together. It is what promotes the language. It is what promotes the dance. The dance goes together with the music, and so that is what we call our popular music in Belize, the Punta music. What the Punta music does is that it essentially consists of types of songs that are used to talk about the culture. And it's just basic things like songs that have lyrics like, I'm feeling sick today, I woke up, and it's just whatever you feel. when you speak to a Garifuna person, they will tell you that the spirit speak to them, their ancestors speak to them, and that's how the music comes about. And these songs are considered to be poetry that capture the history, values, aspirations, concerns, and the deepest feelings of the Garifuna people. So on May 18th, 2001, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, proclaimed the Garifuna language, music, and dance as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible cultural heritage of humanity. And in 2011, we celebrated 10 years since that proclamation. We were one of the leading countries to have something placed on this list. We're the first on the first UNESCO list. So we're very proud of that movement in Belize. So then what does being recognized as an intangible cultural heritage mean? What does it do? Well, an intangible cultural heritage, first of all, is something that you cannot touch. It's the song, it's the music, it's the dance, it's the skills that go into the culture, into the ethnicity, into the group. And this designation basically means that it is an important culture that should be preserved, promoted, and celebrated in the country and also worldwide. Since the recognition by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage, there have been several impacts both nationally and internationally. Before I continue, Garifunas are in Belize, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Guatemala. So when we were first proclaimed as an intangible cultural heritage, it also included both Nicaragua and Honduras, and Guatemala was later placed on the list. And so the national impact, since then we have had a Garifuna Golise Museum, which is in Dangriga, the south, and it is a museum that was inaugurated on November 18, 2004, and it exhibits and funding were donated by hundreds of people and businesses throughout Belize. The museum offers a full multimedia experience for the visitor. You learn about the Garifuna culture, you hear the drummings, you see persons puntaing, and so on when you visit the museum. Another significant development since then is also the Golise Primary School. And what this does is that it's a new way of approaching education, and the curriculum is taught in both English and Garifuna so that the students can understand and also to promote the culture. They also use Spanish as well, because in the south we also have quite a bit of Spanish and Maya speaking persons. And so it's a new approach to language and to developing and preserving the Garifuna culture. And what they do is that all the teachers hired at the Golise Primary School has to speak Garifuna, and each day Garifuna is taught how to say the days of the week. If the story is being read, parts of it are given in Garifuna so as to preserve the culture, which is what the UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage recognition seeks to do. It is about promoting, safeguarding, and letting the culture be known. The more persons that know about it, the more you preserve it and safeguard it. International impact. In 2005, the Nicaraguan president, Enrique Bolaños, had the first international summit of Garifunas in Central America on Nicaragua's Corn Island to ratify the 2003 UNESCO Convention for Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage. His objectives were reported to include joining Corn Island, which is located east of Managua in the Caribbean Sea, with other Garifuna enclaves in the Caribbean, and establish a trade agreement among Caribbean Garifuna communities from Mexico on the Yucatan Peninsula and Nicaragua. He also urged other countries in the region in Central America to have a national Garifuna Settlement Day. In Belize, November 19th is celebrated as National Garifuna Settlement Day. We recognize the Garifunas for when they migrated from St. Vincent to Belize, and it's a big cultural festival. You have Garifuna food, dance, music on display. It's an 2-day event starting from the 18th into the 19th, and every year they also reenact when they came from St. Vincent to Belize. So you have them actually in the dory, we call it, the small boats, paddling, singing, and with their flag coming into the coast of Dangriga. As recently as last year, the Experts in Garifuna from Belize as well as the other Central American countries that I mentioned also came together to have a discussion as to how they could get more out of this UNESCO proclamation. Another national impact in Belize has also been the participation of 8 communities in a 4-week Garifuna dancing and drumming workshop in Dangriga. And you hear me mention Dangriga a lot because that is where most of the Garifunas are in Belize. It is their main community, and they call it in Belize the culture capital because it's a very vibrant culture. It still exists today, and they continue to maintain their culture. This workshop was sponsored by World Bank, Indigenous Peoples Fund, and was facilitated by Garifuna choreographer Eleanor Castillo-Bullock and music teacher James Lovell. So since the topic is on protection of popular Caribbean music, I am speaking more to the culture side in that Garifuna music is more of a traditional knowledge and not necessarily something that is protected by copyright. Intangible cultural heritage is passed orally within a community. It's often broader than an individual skill. It's not about you, the individual, but what you contribute to your ethnic group and your community as a whole. And so traditional Garifuna music is often described as a common heritage of humanity. It belongs to the entire community, not I, the individual, who the ancestor came to and gave that song. Generally, Garifuna music, I cannot pronounce that Garifuna word, but generally Garifuna music is given by the spirits, as I mentioned earlier, rather than composed or written. They would say that you don't sit down and decide to write a Garifuna song. It just comes to you. The ancestors speak to you. The song comes into existence, therefore, without any effort on the part of the person, who will often speak of having learned it instead of taking credit for its coming into being. So then, when I prepared for this presentation, I actually spoke to the person who you saw in the video earlier, Mr. Roy Caetano, and he explained to me that copyright is therefore never an issue when you're speaking to traditional Garifuna music. And it's not an issue because they say that the traditional Garifuna society, because the songs are an effort of collective cultural property which everyone is free to use at any time. They do say, however, that Punta Rock, which is derived, as I said earlier, from traditional Punta music where they added the guitars and so on, are subjected to copyright laws. And so there is a bit of a, it's hard to balance it because the Punta Rock takes the traditional music and adds in the guitars and other modern elements to it. But only Punta Rock, they would say, is subjected to copyright laws. Garifuna composers of traditional music are not in the business of making money, as their songs serve a purpose, and so the individuals do not tend to claim ownership of the songs that they sing, the traditional Garifuna songs. So then what is the purpose of this protection and safeguarding and so on? They will tell you that the aim of protecting traditional Garifuna music, and I say protecting in quotes because it's not about protecting really, but it's about safeguarding and promoting the traditional music, which in turn leads to the strengthening of the culture on a whole. It is about building appreciation for the music by giving the music away, and the success of the music, according to Mr. Roy Caetano, is measured by how far and how wide the music travels and how much it is sung. And they want it to be sung by everybody, not just Garifunas. And so the more people that get involved, the more ethnic groups, the more cultures that get involved in it, then they say that that is successful. I have a quote here from Mr. Roy Caetano. He said, "We have to give culture away so that it can grow." And Roy Caetano is one of the leading persons in the Garifuna culture in Belize. He is one of the leaders in the culture. He led the move to have Garifuna language, music, and dance recognized by UNESCO. And he was also the president of the National Garifuna Council. And so having said all this, I have to leave you with a question that he left me with. And this question remains, what is the best protection for traditional music? And so I'll leave you with that. Maybe we could think about it and we can have a discussion about it later. Thank you.
Okay, short and sweet. Thanks very much, Candace. Garifuna culture, of course, is not very dissimilar from what we have here too, and of course the Caribbean, the Jamaican Belize connection is very well documented too. So thanks very much. Okay, so now I would like to introduce Mr. Regan Mark Asgarali. Regan is an attorney at law who's in the IP office of Trinidad and Tobago as a legal officer too. He joined the office in July 2009 when he left the Faculty of Law, University of the West Indies. 2002, when he left the law school, he went to work in private practice at a firm called Mir and Company, and he also served as a legal secretary to the arbitral panel for the determination of telecoms interconnection disputes. He also practiced in the commercial department of Lex Caribbean from 2008 to 2009, dealing with IP issues, mergers, and acquisitions. He has been the legal officer at the TNT IPO since July 2009. Please help me to welcome Mr. Regan Asgarali.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, good. I'm going to bring the party to this proceedings this afternoon, and I must say I've had very gracious hosts. Thank you to the government of Jamaica, to the ministry, to JIPO, and they've left no stone uncovered in this conference. It has really been a Caribbean think tank, and we hope that it can provide policy for the way forward for the cultural industries. Be that as it may, I will speak today on three topics very dear to me. The first topic would be, I'll address the protection of Caribbean music from the IP perspective and my office's perspective, dealing with piracy and how we can combat piracy, that scourge of piracy, as well as to have legitimate content. I will then delve into the intangible cultural heritage area, and precisely two areas that Trinidad and Tobago is very passionate about. That is the protection of the steel pan music, and I will also delve into works of mass, which is quite a topic that is being discussed at the international level that Mr. Gancha would have spoke about, the IGC, earlier in the proceedings. So if I were to give a 3-minute presentation and to link it, I would link it by this phone. This is a smartphone, and on it, I have legitimate content downloaded from Apple iTunes. I did not put the content from a bootleg CD or had it transferred from a friend. I actually paid for it. And this content is available in the Caribbean region. And to link it to works of mass and carnival, a song that I have on this phone that I will play with the assistance of my friend on IT, a song by Ian Alvarez, Bungie Garlin. And I want you all to picture being at a carnival. It doesn't have to be at Trinidad's carnival. It can be in Notting Hill. It could be at Labor Day, yes, at Brooklyn. And picture yourself in masquerade, on the road, on the stage, with the dance, the music, the performance, all embodied. And that is what I want you to have in your mind about what a work of mass is. So I don't have that much time, but I want to play the song for you, and do enjoy it. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. raising up, and the crowd now waking up. The atmosphere's on fire, and none can break it up. The girl them wind down slow, we are the drinks them in a like oh. We gonna party all night, all night. 24 times in the curtain away. Tonight on the very last show. Before we head out on the road, the girl them a release the road. So let me see your hands up so. Everybody know put your hands up so. Everybody sing with me. We ready for the road. Oh, picture yourself in carnival. We ready for the road. Are we ready? We're ready. 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 So, as you know, I used to be a performer and I'm also a lawyer, so back to the legal hat. So, Mr. Gancha, of that soca, you would have picked up the very distinct rhythm and the writing of the rhythm. It has similar connotations to beautiful reggae that we would have experienced last night. And on this phone, I actually have the Damien brothers, their combination with Nas, with some of my favorite music. So, music in the Caribbean, the creative industries in the Caribbean has limitless potential. But, as you know, there's this scourge of piracy, and more precisely, digital piracy, that is affecting the region. I believe that a twofold approach is necessary. You need to combat these piracy avenues, and you also need to commence with enforcement of the laws protecting intellectual property. We need to have dedicated enforcement and look at numerous strategies across the multidisciplinary ministries that we have in our various Caribbean islands to deal with this. And we have to encourage legitimate means of digital purchase, the download of content. I just gave you an example. I'm pleased to say that Spotify has now opened up its content in the last week for the world. And as licensing streams improve, we now have an HBO Caribbean, Cinemax Caribbean that launched with content. So why not for music? Why not have a Spotify Caribbean where we can have proper licensing to ensure that the streams come down and they don't trickle down, but they actually rain down for artists? I'm going to look very quickly at the importance of this digital content and the worth of it. So for instance, in 2010, 27% of global revenue for recorded music was digital download. It was estimated at US 4.2 billion. This is a major business. 11 million tracks and 400 legal music services are licensed globally. And fans today can access and pay for music in diverse ways, from buying tracks or albums from download stores, using subscription services, listening to music through streaming services. It's limitless. There's actually even a steel pan app that is available for purchase. And there are several reggae apps that I've checked on the iTunes store as well. I also put in Japan, because Japan witnessed a consumer shift to digital download around 2003 to 2004, given the widespread use of smartphones. The Apple iTunes a la carte download model remains the largest revenue source, with 100 million accounts across 23 countries. And this was statistics taken from the International Federation of Phonographic Industries. 90% of legal music content is distributed through Apple iTunes. And I'm pleased to say that Jamaica has a licensing agreement with Apple. Trinidad and Tobago followed, and a number of Caribbean countries. So we are catching up in terms of our licensing streams. I know someone talked about region coding. It might have been yesterday. But the point is that as the global village shrinks, we're going to have that competitive advantage in this region and have the legitimate avenue available. We have done it for film. We have Netflix in the region, and there's a lot of content where you can take out a subscription for $9.99 US, and you will have hundreds of titles on film available. With broadband infrastructure improving throughout the Caribbean, you can now stream your movies legitimately instead of going and buying a bootleg movie or a CD. In fact, at the Trinidad and Tobago IP office, we have partnered with Mr. Roger Alexis, and we hope to have things on stream soon. He is one of our renowned puppeteers, and he's created Santana, which if you go on YouTube, you can see because he's put it out there. Santana is a comedic series, but it's all done with puppets. And I'm pleased to say that at our film festival, he had a movie that premiered with it. And what we intend to do is to target the youth, because the youth do engage in this, and they have to change the older generation. For instance, when I drive home every day from the IP office, I pass by a DVD store, so-called DVD store, and the kind of cars you would see there and the people going in are not poor persons. These are wealthy persons going in to buy $10 DVDs, and they take their children. So what we want to target, and as part of our education thrust, is that we want to have the kids, through this Santana program, to actually tell their parents, Mommy, Daddy, there is legitimate means of content available that you can afford. And let's do this. Let's change the culture. And because at the end of the day, we change the culture, it's going to impact positively on our musicians, our film persons, and on the cultural sector and the creative industry. Thank you. Downloading music and films from the internet is now the most common legal offense committed by young people, aged between 10 and 25, right? But what are we going to do? Are we going to lock up a 10-year-old? Well, to begin with, you can't really lock up a 10-year-old. You might have to put them in a detention center, but what's the point of that? So we've got to look at we've got to think outside the box, and look at different ways to combat this. And what some countries have done, for instance, in the UK, they have created a digital economy bill. And what the digital economy bill did was that if you were found downloading illegal movies, streaming it, because that's how the illegal content is pressed. It comes through the internet or music. Then the ISPs will be brought down under legislation to suspend your service. Now, it's very controversial, but it's something that we need to start discussing. So they might give you a stop order, a suspension order, and it has been shown in studies that it is actually proven to be effective. Now, it's a debate. I don't know if we want to take this avenue in the Caribbean, but it's something worth exploring and then looking at what they did. Hadopi as well was an agency in France that had introduced it. But look at what we're facing if we don't look at this issue and address it head on. I'm reading from a report by my colleague Gail Callender of COSCAP. Piracy has affected the music industry in Barbados to such an extent that there are less than 50 albums being produced each year and fewer record sales being recorded. The result is that creators and investors are now focused on live performances as the primary source of income. You might think that that's fine, but if someone becomes ill, has a very bad injury, how are you going to make money from live performances? How are you going to have that money going on after your death, when the copyright gives you life for the author plus 50 years, and for performers, there's a period for it of 50 and other years in different jurisdictions. So what we did in Trinidad, we had a legislative framework for the management of IP rights. We formed it in 2010. We examined that act amongst a plethora of many other issues. And we recommended to look at it further with WIPO and see what we can do to combat this area. In Kenya, the government also set up an agency to fight trade in substandard and counterfeit goods. And that agency basically successfully prosecuted persons. And in Senegal, they had a very interesting project called, and it was part of something called the Africa Music Project. And what their bureau did, as you can see on the screen, is that they provided difficult to counterfeit hologram stickers to protect copyright compositions. They also instituted a tracking system and combined it with an aggressive education campaign and effective enforcement. It has been successful in that country. Why we can't look at this in the Caribbean? We also have to address the financial institutions, that issue, and that has been talked about ad nauseum, so I will not raise it, as well as IPR valuation. So, skipping along to the protection of intangible cultural heritage and the initiatives taken for this. UNESCO, thankfully, has assisted in the region for this endeavor, and in the UNESCO Convention for the Protection of Intangible Cultural Heritage, Trinidad and Tobago is a signatory, as well as Jamaica, and there's actually a project between Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and Belize, if I recall. And we're looking at this aspect of protecting our cultural heritage. It was funded by the government of Japan, and there was a workshop held in Trinidad in 2013 as part of the sub-regional project being implemented, and with the intention of UNESCO's global strategy and capacity building to safeguard the cultural heritage. So, if you look at the article of the treaty, it is to safeguard, importantly, and to ensure respect for the intangible cultural heritage, as well as to raise awareness. And I recognize a member of the UNESCO chapter in Kingston here in the audience. So, in the article, UNESCO's article, the intangible cultural heritage is defined and includes oral traditions and expressions, and the Caribbean is full of oral traditions and expressions, as well as the performing arts, and of course rituals and festive events. So immediately when I think of a festive event, I just think of what happened earlier and the carnival and works of mass. So moving along, the efforts of Trinidad and Tobago's delegation to WIPO to protect works of mass. Now, I tried to explain what the work of mass is, and it's a lot to put in, but it's a model provision entitled in Works of Mass in our Copyright Act. It is also in Grenada's legislation, and I believe it is being looked at for Antigua as well. Yes, right. So the definition of works of mass involves a combination of tangible manifestation, such as a physical costume, and the intangible manifestation, such as a style of dance, a style of oratory, a physical costume. It has to be seen as performative acts that comprise elements of the tangible and intangible culture. So essential is the performance that they're inseparable, and therefore any attempt to separate the two can lead to a faulty policy. Works which receive copyright protection usually are the product of the sweat of the brow of an individual. In other words, to receive copyright protection, there must be some originality. By contrast with traditional cultural expressions, and my colleague had touched on it in her presentation, the notion of the author is absent. Works of mass are more than physical items of costume and handicraft. They include many other things. So in Trinidad and Tobago, we are looking at it more as something that can fit as a traditional cultural expression, because we have many different elements in it that have been traditional characters, such as the Dame Lorraine, the Perro Grenade, and all of these characters that form part of the carnival. So that is why we are making very strident efforts at the Intergovernmental Committee to try to have it protected in that instrument that Mr. Ganchev had spoken about. The protection of steel pan in Trinidad and Tobago. And what, unfortunately, it took a crisis for us to wake up and realize that we had to try and protect this. And you can see that from the top of the slide, 5 steel pan patents were awarded across the globe between 1982 and 2004. And the IP office had to go on the offensive and to show that there was prior art and that it had existed since the early 20th century when it was invented in Trinidad and Tobago. We successfully prosecuted the main ones and had it overturned. Of course, this caused public outcry, ruction, so to speak, in my country. And it prompted the government of Trinidad and Tobago to appoint a committee to challenge the patents. The committee was also mandated to recommend protective measures for Trinidad and Tobago's intangible cultural heritage. So it comes full circle. The connection between IP, intangible cultural heritage. The Steel Pan Foundation out of this was recommended by this committee to be founded with relevant objectives under the broad heading of safeguarding heritage and artiste recognition. And I just want to touch a little more on the protection of that steel pan heritage while I have 2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yeah. So the mandate was to prevent persons or groups of persons, such as non-nationals of Trinidad and Tobago, from copying and exploiting copies of the steel pan. It also was to ensure that any copies of the steel pan, wherever and by whomever they are made, indicate the origin of the instrument as Trinidad and Tobago. And I know there are efforts to have the origin, well, I think it's pretty clear, the origin of reggae is Jamaica. Zouk, St. Lucia. The committee was also mandated to consider the establishment of a program to grant official recognition to exceptionally talented tradition bearers and craftspeople. And it's essential because if you lose this knowledge, this traditional knowledge, so to speak, then you're never going to get it back. So unless there is a memory bank to record it, then it's going to be lost for the future generations. And of course, the development of a national system of recognition of Trinidad and Tobago's cultural art forms and the masters of the arts, which may include indigenous music, classical and folk music, pottery, painting, and the like. In dealing with the mandate, the committee's work process involved a thorough examination of 6 reports on culture submitted to the government between 1981 and 2005, with a view to determining the applicability of any of the recommendations. So they looked at the Sheila Lowe Graham report, Organizing the Cultural Complex of Trinidad and Tobago, the report of the Steering Committee for the National Commission on Culture, 1988, the report of the Cabinet-appointed Committee on the National Visual and Performing Arts Policy, and proposals for the formation of a National Council of Trinidad and Tobago. And importantly, Trinidad and Tobago, and this is what everyone came to the conclusion, take early steps to accede to the UNESCO Convention for the safeguarding of the intangible cultural heritage. And of course, that was acted upon. And that a heritage center be established as a legal entity reporting to the culture minister and charged with the overall responsibility of safeguarding the cultural heritage. And in conclusion, because I am a minute over my time, the recent initiatives with the steel pan include the filing of the Genesis pan, which is an improvement on the prior art, and it was filed as TTA 2007-0072 in July 2007. Shortly after, a PCT application was filed in July 2007 in several jurisdictions. I don't have the exact figure, but it's more than 50. Similar to that, a trademark, which you would have all learned about during the week, was filed for the term Genesis Pan in several jurisdictions. It has since been successfully examined in several jurisdictions around the world and has been granted in many major markets, such as in the US, in certain European Union countries, and China, to name a few. So it is up to the owners, the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, to begin to use these patents to support the marketing of the technology, because what is the point of having the intellectual property if you cannot use it and license it to make money and to promote your country image and brand? And so that is what we need to look at. And I mean, I could have gone on because I think that we need to have some synergy and probably promote the Caribbean as the culture for music tourism. The music is so strong in this region that a united front is probably needed, so, sort of like with West Indies cricket. And let's get there. Thank you.
Yes, Regan, thanks. Bad example, but we forgive you, you know. Yeah, man, yeah, man. All right. Thanks very much, Regan. Lot of food for thought. So we're going to go right into the next presenter, Dr. Dennis Howard. Dr. Howard is a 30-year veteran of broadcasting and entertainment, who has worked in media as a radio and TV personality, producer, program manager, editor, and entertainment writer. In the music business, he has a solid reputation as a Grammy-nominated producer, artist manager, publicist, sound system DJ, and production manager. Currently, apart from working in the entertainment and events business, he is an adjunct lecturer in entertainment and cultural enterprise management at UWI Mona. He has a PhD in cultural studies and ethnomusicology. He has presented his research at conferences in the UK, Brazil, USA, Mexico, South Africa, Japan, Ghana, and several Caribbean islands. He's also had several peer-reviewed articles in publications including Caribbean Quarterly, the Encyclopedia of Popular Music of the World, and the Jamaica Journal. His book, Ranting from Inside the Dance Hall, has received international acclaim for its insider perspective on the cultural industries, nationally and internationally. His next book, called The Creative Echo Chamber, is scheduled for release later this year. Dr. Dennis Howard.
So Regan can't come to Kingston and outdo me, so I'm going to perform. Short thing. Say, people, are you ready? No. Oh, Lord. All right. Down to business. All right. Just want to recognize some luminaries in the house. The Honorable Neville O'Reilly Livingston Bonnewala, and of course, the man who rocked us last night, big man over there. What's your name again? What's your name again? All right, Harold Davis the Great. A good album coming out. Listen for it. And of course, Stephen Golden, great guitarist and musician and producer and IP specialist. All right. The issue of protecting reggae has been on the forefront of intellectual property conversations for some time now. Since the passing of the 1993 Copyright Act, the creative industry has seen a remarkable growth in the awareness of intellectual property issues and the establishment of various rights management organizations. However, with this positive growth and awareness, there also has been a high level of apathy, gross misrepresentation, and misunderstanding of intellectual property issues, especially in the realm of copyright. While there has been a significant growth in the area of registration, attribution, revenue collection, and the institutionalization of rights management regimes in the island, there have not been any significant changes in how the music industry perceives copyright. In fact, many creators have ignored it for the most part when engaged in the music making process. I have noted elsewhere that Jamaican music making had no regard for copyright and virtually ignored the Copyright Act of 1913 during the golden period of cultural production in Kingston. I've also noted that the music production was done in what I call the open domain. This is an environment devoid of copyright enforcement and more significantly was characterized by the exploitation of creators who were not aware of copyright protection, nor was concerned with its implication with regards to its economic benefit. This, I argued, was perhaps one of the African retentions of the working class black majority who made up the creative class. Oyenka Owomoyela, I got it, noted that creatives in Western Africa would not think of copywriting or attaching his or her name to a song. Whatever smacks of possessive assertiveness, even one's disputed possession, run counter to the traditional spirit, runs counter to the traditional spirit. Under the open domain environment, creativity flourished, as the music industry was not encumbered by sometimes restrictive copyright legislation. Various innovations such as versioning, the remix, thanks to Tubbies and Scratchberry, and dub would not have been possible under strict copyright enforcement. As Carter Van Pelt suggests, the cultural history of Jamaica is complex, but it seems evident that a culturally distinct attitude towards creative expression and ownership of creative expression was a part of the framework in which the Jamaican music industry first flourished. Now, fast forward to the current debate about intellectual property rights enforcement, and you will see the disconnect with the official cultural policy on IP and entrenched practices of disregarding copyright at the level of music making, of the level of the music making process. As Wolf suggests, all right. I'm going to go to this chart. I hope you can see it. I'll read it for you if you can. I'm just looking at some of the songs that were done by Jamaicans. And a lot of people believe that these songs were original songs, but in fact they were covers. And also there are a lot of exploitation of Jamaican artists. Eddie Lovett came to Jamaica. Bob Handy wrote a few songs for him, and only to realize that he took the credit for the authorship of the songs. And that is one of the reasons why Bob Handy, after that, really got into copyright, and at one stage started a Caribbean copyright association, which never lasted too long. So look at these songs. Rain from the Sky, Delroy classic, originally done by Adam Wade. I Love I Can Feel, which was a song called I Love I Can See by the Temptations. No, 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 you don't love me. This is a blues song from Willie Cobbs, which was done by Don Penn. You Don't Care for Me at All, the Impressions, done by the Techniques. No Man is an Island, that classic Dennis Brown, originally done by the Van Dyke, and so on and so on. But the thing is, one thing for sure, when you pound for pound, when you listen to these songs, the Jamaican versions are the classic, and the superior one to my mind. All right. As Wolf suggests, all actions including creative and innovative action, all action, including creative and innovative actions, arises in a complex conjunction of numerous structural determinants and conditions. Any concept of creativity which denies this is metaphysical and cannot be sustained. So this brings me to believe that the issue of protection of reggae is coming from a different set of motivations which might not have anything to do with creativity, cultural preservation, national pride or identity. In recent years, there has developed a somewhat what some people call an overzealous cry for copyright enforcement among stakeholders, a position that has been driven by the Western notions of individual creative genius and his individual right to ownership of creative expression. This has created a philosophical tension which is being played out as we speak, which pits right management organization against the very industry they are supposed to represent. A good example of this is the current standoff between JAMS and JACAP with sections of the cultural industries, such as events promoters, broadcasters, sound system operators, who have accused the CMOs of charging unreasonable fees that are liable to put them out of business. Whether this is true or not, I don't know. These stakeholders have accused the CMO of not understanding the realities of the Jamaican marketplace and state that these new fees are placing a tremendous burden on an already struggling sector. This points to the phenomenon of imposing a system which is based on secular European Enlightenment philosophy without considering the cultural specificity of the region in which it's being applied. In this case, Jamaica, who for decades before the updated 1993 Act have developed products that have gained international recognition with a music-making machinery which for the most part disregard copyright at the national level and engage primarily with copyright in the copyright industry at the international level. I made the preceding observation because the cry for protection of reggae, I believe, comes from the same belief that protection will translate into income generation and prosperity. I want to ask the question, is there a genuine need to protect reggae? And when we say reggae, are we talking the word or the genre? I believe the word cannot be protected, especially when there is no proof of authorship under copyright or trademark laws. No one can trace the development of the word with any degree of accuracy or evidence. As for the genre reggae, the question is, can a genre be protected under intellectual property rights? And why is there a need to protect it? The answer to my mind is no. I don't know of any precedents of a genre being protected under intellectual property rights. Genres are problematic in coming up with definitive definitions. This is an issue that has been at the forefront of discourses on music styles for many decades. According to Fabian Holt, struggles about names and definitions are often an integral part of the histories of individual musics and their cultural dynamics. He also asks a very pertinent question. Why do people have different names for the same music? Like all other genres, there are numerous definitions for reggae. Which one will you choose? That's one from Wikipedia, and here's another from the Encyclopedia Britannica. From where I stand, the best option for protection of reggae, the genre, has been put forward by JACAP, and that is to have the genre protected as an intangible cultural heritage under the UNESCO Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. As stated in a document prepared by the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment, that's where I got it from, so I'm not sure if it's coming from JACAP also. The formal recognition by UNESCO of reggae as national intangible cultural heritage would better enable Jamaica to maintain control over the definition, recognition, and identification of the musical form. This will ensure that more of the economic wealth, moral rights and trademark and geographical indication like benefits will flow from use of the indication or designation reggae would be retained in Jamaica. However, we have to make a very important move before the UNESCO initiative, and that is to officially, at a national government level, recognize reggae and all other Jamaican genres as ours. It must start with us making the statement loud and clear that this is our music, which we are willing to share, but no one else should claim it. This means a national declaration that mento, ska, rocksteady, reggae, dub, dancehall, and all new emerging sounds are distinctly Jamaican and should be recognized as being from the creative imagination of the people of Jamaica. I believe this is a critical first step before the UNESCO, as important as it is, initiative. Similar initiatives have been successfully executed by other nations, including the United States, who through the work of Congressman John Conyers, Jr., and the Congressional Black Caucus, successfully through legislation recognized jazz as an American art form. In 1985, under Conyers' leadership, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Jazz Issue Forum and Concert was established to enhance and perpetuate the art form. Its emphasizes its cultural heritage and force awareness and pride within the African American community. The very important House Concurrent Resolution 57 designating jazz a national American treasure followed in 1987. In 1990, Conyers again won passage of a resolution commemorating tap, the recognized dance form of jazz. Under that measure, May 25th, the birthday of Bilbo Jangles Robinson, was designated National Tap Day. Also in 1990, Congressman Conyers again won passage of appropriation legislation awarding the Smithsonian Institution with funding to establish a comprehensive jazz program, including the Smithsonian Jazz Masterwork Orchestra. The position paper from the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment also noted the efforts of Argentina and Uruguay to successfully have tango inscribed on UNESCO's representative list of intangible cultural heritage. My fellow presenter just mentioned Belize. And so, ladies and gentlemen, finally, the option provides the intangible cultural heritage option provides the best opportunity to ensure, one, Jamaica will be internationally recognized as the birthplace of reggae. The moral rights where applicable will accrue to Jamaica. Destination tourism can flourish based on pilgrimage to the land of reggae, one of Jamaica's gifts to the world. 4, the establishment of initiatives with the backing of international funding for the preservation, archiving, and continued development of the genre. Through, importantly, creative business models and innovative entrepreneurial initiatives, the economic benefits can be realized. The call for the protection of reggae, the word or the genre on the intellectual property rights is for me a non-starter. However, through the discourse, a viable alternative has been realized. It is one that is well overdue when one considers the history of appropriation and non-attribution that developed entertainment markets have been notorious for inflicting on smaller music scenes like Kingston. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Howard. A lot of interesting material there. I know there's a lot of questions that are going to follow and comments, but we're going to save them until the end of the presentations. And we're making good time, so thanks for keeping the timing tight. Our next speaker then is Dr. Janice Lindsay. Dr. Lindsay is the director of the Center for the Arts at UTEC, Jamaica. She is responsible for the administration and management of the CFA, Center for the Arts, which coordinates and teaches the university's cultural arts programs. She has a PhD in World Cultural Heritage Studies from the University of Tsukuba in Japan. Tsukuba in Japan. She also holds a Master of Arts in Heritage Studies and a Bachelor of Arts in Media and Communication from UWI Mona. She obtained awards for her work in sustainable heritage tourism, among them the Ministry of Education and Culture, Sports, Science and Technology, Government of Japan Scholarship 2007, and University of Tsukuba Certificate of Merit for Doctoral Research 2010. Dr. Lindsay currently serves as the board member of the Ethnomusicologist College of the Visual and Performing Arts, Hope Valley Experimental School, and also the Nature Preservation Foundation. She was recently named as one of 2 representatives from Jamaica to serve on UNESCO's World Heritage Committee. Dr. Janice Lindsay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I can assure you I am not a performer. I will not be attempting to perform. But I ask you to just indulge me a little bit, because performance in general is actually my daily life. As director for the Center for the Arts at UTEC, I am surrounded by performances from our students on a daily basis. And I find myself contextualizing and painting pictures in relation to performances. So even in the context of the very brief conversation we'll have this afternoon, I want you to focus a little bit on the slide that's coming up next and just think a little bit about this particular quotation. Music is an all-occasion, all-inclusive art form. The better we know our parts and the better we follow the conductor, the more beautiful the music. Now, I know that this particular quote, you could be contemplating it from various angles. I want you to, however, focus on the word conductor. I would like to suggest, ladies and gentlemen, that the conductor is the world stage. I do believe that this very conference solidifies this simple but very poignant fact. Caribbean music has been traversing the globe for decades, but the extent to which we as small island developing states have been responding to the conductor's lead and moving to the rhythmic language of global initiatives to help build the socioeconomic and political values of Caribbean music is primarily the reason we continue to have discourses like this. We have yet to find a stable footing to navigate the stage in a strategic and sustained manner that leaves all performers at all tiers of the system reasonably fulfilled at the cultural, social, and economic level. Bearing in mind that the world stage can present itself in the form of the physical performance spaces to the technological stage that is new media in its varied forms, there is that challenge to be responsible in protecting the integrity of Caribbean music, even while attempting to exploit its economic benefits. When we speak of an abundance and global appeal of musical genres, there is no region in the world as comparable to the Caribbean. Arguably, every island carries at least one signature music form that is solely identifiable to that particular country. From Trinidad and Tobago's folk rhythm calypso to Cuba's salsa, the legend of Jamaica's reggae music, compas from Haiti, and bacta from the Dominican Republic, the genres from the Caribbean have undoubtedly seeped their way into the consciousness of peoples across the globe. However, let us not lose sight of the fact that amidst the well-known music forms of the region, there are still a number of others that are untapped, unrecognized, and underutilized. Here we are speaking of foundation genres such as ska and rocksteady, which were the precursor to the popular reggae genre. And still, there are other music forms rooted in indigenous cultural communities across the region that are in a similar underutilized and under-recognized state. Collectively, millions of Caribbean nationals should be reaping the benefits of the diverse music genres rooted in the region. But if the widest cross-section of peoples of the Caribbean is to have a presence on the world stage, there must be a direct and sustained effort to safeguard the region's music as an integral element of intangible cultural heritage. I am suggesting, therefore, that the debate and action must go well beyond the protection of the musical genres. Safeguarding is not a new concept, but neither is it an applied concept in many parts of the region. The first step towards appreciating the concept of safeguarding is to embrace the roots of intangible cultural heritage, referenced by UNESCO as a society's living heritage. It is almost as though we have to dig out and understand the soul of our identity before we can attempt to spread the varying elements of that identity. But let us have the discussion now based on what is happening on the world stage. The 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage seeks to celebrate and safeguard intangible heritage that is distinctive to particular communities and affirms that the intangible heritage of all communities, whether they are large or small, dominant or non-dominant, deserves our respect. Up to November 2013, 158 states had ratified the convention. Using UNESCO's defined list of small island developing states as the statistical guide, 24 or 15% of SIDS are accounted for among the 158 states. This is a marginally good presence considering there are 47 SIDS listed overall. The encouraging news is that Caribbean SIDS account for the highest numbers of signatories with 12 of the 24 states. Only 4 SIDS members from the Caribbean are not yet signatories, to include the Bahamas, Guyana, St. Kitts, and Suriname. As noted earlier, protection is essential based on the conversation we're having. However, safeguarding measures under the convention also includes promotion, transmission through formal and non-formal education, research and revitalization, and that very important point of encouraging greater respect and awareness of your intangible cultural heritage assets. Ratification offers 3 complementary safeguarding mechanisms. Firstly, there is a list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding. And thankfully, the Caribbean does not have a presence on this particular mechanism at this time. And this augurs well for the Caribbean, given the range of vulnerabilities that we tend to face. Secondly, there is the representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity, which is now loosely referred to as the World Intangible Heritage List. This list is intended to ensure visibility and awareness of the significance of intangible cultural heritage, and to encourage dialogue, thus reflecting cultural diversity worldwide and testifying to human creativity. There is a third register that captures best safeguarding practices intended to promote international cooperation and exchange concerning programs that have most effectively safeguarded such heritage. In addition to the 3 named mechanisms, there is a third that is promoting mechanisms for sharing information to encourage multinational files. And this mechanism is particularly relevant for the Caribbean region, where intangible cultural heritage is often shared by communities in territories of more than one state, as we would have noticed from the Garifuna that spreads across Belize, Honduras, and Guatemala. Given our focus this afternoon, I want us to just turn our attention to the World Intangible Heritage List. Any element being put forward for consideration on the list must fulfill not part, but all of the following criteria. So in this case, the element that we're putting forward in this conversation is music. The music element must constitute intangible cultural heritage as defined in Article 2 of the Convention. Inscription of the music element will contribute to ensuring visibility and awareness of that ICH. The music element must be nominated by the widest possible participation of the community, group, or applicable individuals concerned with their free, prior, and informed consent. Finally, the music element must be included in an inventory of the national intangible cultural lists. In other words, if, for example, reggae music is not captured on Jamaica's list of intangible cultural heritage, then we're going to be facing a challenge when it comes to our efforts to try and get reggae music listed on the masterpieces of intangible cultural heritage. How does the Caribbean rank in terms of its presence on the named lists? Now, there are currently 63 files that are being reviewed or that are to be reviewed in November by the Intergovernmental Committee of the Intangible Cultural Heritage group. There is no Caribbean ICH to be evaluated. Interestingly, there are also 138 pending elements, and there is also no Caribbean presence. But thankfully, we can be proud of the fact that there are 4 listings from the Caribbean on the World Intangible Heritage List, to include, as we see listed here, Tumba in Cuba, the language, dance, and music of the Garifuna, the Kokolo dance drama of the Dominican Republic, and also out of Dominican Republic, the cultural space of the Brotherhood of Holy Spirit. And completing the list, of course, is the Maroon Heritage of Moortown in Jamaica for its music and related cultural assets. But I want us to reflect quickly on these statistics relative to the timeliness of this conference, and specifically this discussion surrounding the protection of Caribbean popular music. It is never enough to simply ratify a convention like this. It does nothing for the cultures and peoples of the respective states parties if the instruments that are designed to assist in safeguarding are not utilized. In fact, it should be noted that signatories to the convention, to include Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, Belize, Cuba, Dominica, Dominican Republic, Grenada, Haiti, Jamaica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad and Tobago, are obligated and bound by the convention to safeguard the ICH of their respective countries. We must establish, as a matter of urgency, sustained initiatives that will get us started towards fulfilling our obligation to our communities, our countries, and the convention. As noted by UNESCO, safeguarding intangible cultural heritage is not a luxury. It is a necessity to meet the challenges of today's world. We cannot take for granted that being signatories or having a presence on international seats will help us protect our ICH. Like the World Heritage Committee, to which Jamaica was for the first time in November last year voted to serve for a 4-year term, the Intergovernmental Committee for Safeguarding ICH has a Caribbean representation in the form of Grenada, which completes its 4-year term in 2014. What I would like to suggest here is that given that we're going to be losing Grenada's presence on the list, other Caribbean islands are now positioned to try and fill that gap so that we can maintain our presence and maintain a voice. Without a doubt, the Caribbean is strategically positioned to help influence the place and space of tangible and intangible assets. In order to take advantage of the instrumental or the international instruments of protection, as a region, we must know what we have to offer. So we have to focus on inventorying the many music forms in the Caribbean. It is the most practical way to begin the process of safeguarding. We must know what is unique to our communities, and we can then take steps to not only protect, but to transmit, revitalize, promote, and importantly, monetize these offerings. Inventorying is an area in which some islands of the Caribbean have been doing very well, namely Cuba, Belize, Jamaica, Trinidad, and Tobago. And through UNESCO's Global Strategy on Capacity Building, we have seen a number of national workshops that have been taking place in this regard. Okay, thank you. I think it's important that we note that inventorying is not a process or an event in itself, but a process that we have to follow. There has been a constant dialogue. There has to be a constant dialogue with the communities from which the intangible cultural heritage is derived to ensure that there is a credible and authentic documentation of what is coming out of our communities as a reflection of their identity. I think as academics, policymakers, etc., we make the dreaded and repeated mistake of imposing our analysis and views on communities, when in fact there is no greater expert than the community members themselves in defining and articulating their identities. Now, I've just been advised that I have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to have to be jumping leaps and bounds now to get through the presentation. I want to speak a little bit quickly, if we can go straight ahead to the question that Dr. Howard brought up in his presentation. What is the significance of efforts by the Jamaican government to include reggae music on the World Intangible Heritage List? The ministries that are involved must be commended for the effort. If we are to remind ourselves of the criteria for listing on the World Intangible Heritage List, it is clear that the music is in a good position to gain such an inscription. It is imperative that we do not overlook the communities if and when this designation comes. Not only must we must continue to protect the interests of residents. I'm just going to point to some of the most known communities. So we must protect the interests of the residents of Trench Town, communities like 9 Miles in St. Anne, because we have to recognize that safeguarding reggae is not just about protecting the creative and financial interests of artists, composers, musicians, business managers, etc. Safeguarding is in fact primarily about securing the interests of all associated with the music. So communities like 9 Miles, for example, in St. Anne, the birthplace of Bob Marley, are heritage destinations within their own right. The area is now known as Reggae Land, and I don't know how many of you would have been driving through St. Anne in recent times to see the signage along the way leading to 9 Miles, and the area is now dubbed as Reggae Land. Reggae Land, if strategically positioned, should become a sought-after destination for not only lovers of reggae music, but also purposeful cultural tourists who simply open themselves to embracing the diverse cultures of the destination they visit. I'm certain I don't need, and I don't have the time in any case, to break down the potential economics for this community. The bottom line is that we must ensure that our communities realize the maximum benefits from the cultural heritage that is entrenched in these communities. As a region, I want to suggest that in order for us to make the most of this particular intangible cultural heritage, the answer lies in basic heritage economics. And I'm just going to reference them. Tourism activity that is controlled, research and development, and creative entrepreneurship. When I speak of tourism activity, I just want to quickly reference what would be or what would make for an interesting scenario, which exists in many contexts across the globe, where a community enjoys both international prestige, World Heritage status and World Intangible Heritage status. And ladies and gentlemen, Jamaica is very close to being in such a unique position, having had the music heritage of Moortown already declared on the masterpiece of humanity. The Moortown Maroons in Portland also fall within the Blue and John Crow Mountains that is now put forward for designation on the World Heritage List. When we think about research and development within our cultural communities, this is something that I believe from the perspective of how we utilize particularly our indigenous music, we can also help to position our communities. Because we have countless situations where persons, researchers, academics, special interest groups come into communities, but sadly, there is no structure to the services that are offered. And very often, custodians are not paid for their expertise and knowledge. And the conversation really is to get us to a point where these persons are able to benefit from the sharing of their wide knowledge and expertise in intangible cultural heritage, such as our music. And finally, looking at creative entrepreneurship. This is something, obviously, that we've been talking about extensively and would have come out, I would imagine, quite a bit in the discussions that have been taking place in this conference. But essentially, it is about taking the traditional music forms and placing a contemporary face on those traditional music forms to create employment opportunities for persons within the communities. And I could reference several examples where this has been done, But the important thing is that we must ensure that the indigenous music cultures must look for protection, viability, and presence on the world stage. And I am now wrapping up. In concluding, I want to just leave a couple of thoughts with you. Because of the interconnectedness of our intangible cultural heritage, it is recommended that as a region, we focus on safeguarding our assets as a whole, and not necessarily focus our energies only on protection or only on one element of ICH. While music is admittedly a major component of our intangible heritage assets, there is even more merit and benefits to be gained if associated assets such as dance and language are safeguarded to include copyright and intellectual initiatives that are being discussed generally. And we see this again referring to the Garifuna communities, where the focus is not just on language or on music. They were able to put forward their common language, oral traditions, music, and dances, and we see that as well in the Moortown community. So the responsibility should be for each country to inventorize its intangible cultural heritage assets and to seek to determine, in conversation with communities, those assets that it is felt must be safeguarded for protection, promotion, revitalization, and economic viability. Finally, the concept of global heritage is rooted in the cultural assets belonging to peoples of the world. I implore you, ladies and gentlemen, do not be alarmed by that belonging to the peoples of the world notion. In fact, I encourage you to give your music to the world, but don't wait for it to be exploited by external stakeholders. If we see value in sharing our intangible asset with others, push for its recognition and viability. If the music is losing its authenticity because it's exposed and different persons are adding their own interpretations to it, as bearers and custodians of the music, we have the power to address that. The instruments of safeguarding are there to give us that power of protection, to give us that voice to ensure that in as much as our music belongs to the world, it is first and foremost the inalienable, intangible asset of the respective country within the Caribbean. We are being given a unique opportunity to do more than move to the global beat in safeguarding Caribbean music. We can, in fact, influence that beat, shape that verse, and lead the chorus. How we position ourselves within the broad remit of safeguarding our music is where the opportunities lie. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks very much, Dr. Lindsay. Very important points in terms of the connection to community and keeping it not only music, but of course holistic. Okay, so we have two more speakers to go. And the next speaker is Dr. Donna Hope-Marquis. Dr. Hope-Marquis is a cultural analyst and director, senior lecturer in the Institute of Caribbean Studies at UWI-Mona. She's the former host of the daytime radio talk show Disclosure on Hot 102 and the creator and current host of the daytime radio show 96 Degrees, aired on News Talk 93 FM. Her extensive research on Jamaican culture and music, particularly dancehall culture, has resulted in several publications, including 2 single-authored best-selling books, Inner the Dancehall, Popular Culture and Politics of Identity in Jamaica, and Man Vibes, Masculinities in the Jamaican Dancehall. She also has one edited book called International Reggae, Current and Future Trends in Jamaican Popular Music, 2013. A strong advocate for youth development through education, and a strong believer in the value and potential of all aspects of Jamaican culture, her small non-profit Full of Hope Productions promotes youth development and and education by utilizing relevant aspects of Jamaican culture. She is the holder of a BA First Class Honors in Mass Communication and a MPhil in Government from UWI-Mona. Dr. Hope was a Fulbright Scholar 2002 to 2004 and completed her PhD in Cultural Studies at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. Please let me welcome Dr. Donna Hope-Marquis.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Mr. Hope. Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues, friends, representatives of the music industry, and I also want to recognize our last living legend, Bonnie Whale in the house, and other creators. And specifically other creators in the music industry without whom, of course, individuals like myself would not be able to speak to the value and the relevance of Caribbean music. And in this instance, my focus will be on Jamaican popular music, in particular reggae and dancehall, and looking in a real detail at what are some of the important aspects of these music forms that are critical in our discussion about the way forward for protection and also, even more importantly, for the monetizing of these products and these artifacts that are very important to the way forward for countries like Jamaica and other countries in the region. So my focus will be looking more specifically at Jamaican popular music, reggae and dancehall, and what are some of the aspects of Jamaican music that we look at in our discussion about the protection of music, the value of the music, and the role of Caribbean and Jamaican music in the international imagination. Music and the discussion has been focusing on this a lot in our panel and in some of the earlier discussions, chiefly under the ambit of intangible culture, and we look at the definition from the Convention on the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage that pulls out for us some of the aspects that we have been focusing on and around which my presentation will be cited. Intangible cultural heritage, that includes some of the practices and the representations, the expressions, the knowledge, the skills, as well as the various instruments, objects, various artifacts, and other aspects of the culture, the cultural spaces, and all the things that are associated with this, as well as the fact that these aspects of intangible culture are transmitted through and across various generations and communities, and really reflect the sense of identity, the continuity, and really promote the kind of cultural diversity and human creativity that are parts of these various communities. In this instance, looking at the focus on Jamaican popular music and how the levels of identity, local identity, and regional identity are cited within Jamaican popular music. So what are some of the cultural meanings that are transmitted through the music forms, and which we would look at in terms of our value-laden systems, what we would wish to, one, protect, recognize, and of course monetize. We look, for example, at what the songs, the lyrics, for example, carry. So we would not just be looking at the song as a music form, but also what is made up. What is the song made up of? The instruments, the instrumentals, the rhythms, and in Jamaica we also say rhythms, giving credit, of course, to dancehall. The performance aspect, the stage performances, the dance, the fashion, the music videos, which carry with them very critical spatial reference that locate the ideas of culture and cultural heritage, particularly within a particular local and national space that is Jamaica. The product that carries the music outwards from Jamaica, the vinyl records that are now for many collectors' items, the CDs, iTunes downloads, the EPs, mixtapes, and the aesthetics that go along with these products. And also, very important, the way of life that is coded within all of these various cultural products that form the overall body of work that is the cultural heritage that is located within Jamaican popular music. Now, the title of my presentation is taken in a real sense from a very popular Jamaican dancehall song, watch out for this. And the underlying rationale for this discussion comes from the notion that there is a discussion, and Dr. Howard alluded to it in his presentation, about the appropriation, or is it imitation, of Jamaican popular music. This is a clip from a news item, a news report on the discussion that we had on the Billboard chart. This is the May 2013 discussion on the Billboard chart, where the top 10 albums, reggae albums on that chart, 7 out of the 10 were white American groups or individuals, and only 3 referred to Jamaica. So we'll listen to a little of this.
Jamaica, but according to the Billboard charts, this week's top-selling reggae albums are by non-Jamaicans. And to add to that, they are all by white Americans. Joining us to talk about this tonight is Felicia Prasad. And Felicia, I find this fascinating. What do you think is the reason behind this?
It really is a fascinating story, Cara. I think it's, it's all about the gentrification of the genre, and also the impact that Bob Marley still has all these years after his death. These are all white young guys and groups that grew up on Bob Marley, and they've been singing in the reggae, in the underground for years, and now they're basically coming out on top. We've got a group called Christafari entering this week at the #1 spot. They are a roots reggae group, and they sing reggae that is more of the spiritual side. And then you've got Josh Heinrich. He's been around forever in the indie reggae scene. He's actually entering at #2 with Rooftop Sessions, and they're all in the #5. So 7 out of the top 10, they're all white, they're all non-Jamaicans, all Americans, and they're all taking up the top 7 of the 10 spots.
Wow, we're showing some video now of Fortunate Youth. That is just one of the groups at the top of the Billboard charts this week. Felicia, have you had a chance to listen to any of these groups? Are they any good? Yours.
Thank you. And this discussion was one that many of us had, because, of course, for many Jamaicans, we have not heard of Christafari, which is a takeoff of Rastafari. We have not heard much of Revolution. We have not heard much of Josh Heinrich, and that the person that was performing, that's Josh Heinrich. This was actually posted to his Facebook page, and he received multiple accolades for his own location on the chart. On that chart, the 3 Jamaican compilations that were actually in the top 10 was a Bob Marley, a Jimmy Cliff, and a reggae compilation. The discussions that we have, and which I look at particularly from my role as a researcher on Jamaican culture, ask the question, is it a threat or an opportunity? Do these things pose some kind of opportunity for us to look at the outward spread of the music? And also, is it that there is some merit to the imitative components, or do we look at it as a form of appropriation where, one, we are losing not just particular elements of our culture, but even more so what some of my fellow panelists have already alluded to, the income streams that flow from these cultural products, which are very necessary components of the lives of individuals, like many of our cultural creators who still live in Jamaica, many of whom face hardships along different paths in their lives. And I'll show another, this is another what I would say another imitative / appropriative moment. This is Seed, 3 E's, a German reggae dancehall group out of Berlin, very popular in Europe. This is a video this is a 2003 video called Music Monks. Can you play a section from it? Yes.
System up to 10. I see the monks ride again. Wiggle with tongue, wine again. Everybody go hype again. You better run or sing again. I see the monks ride again. Wiggle with tongue, wine again. Everybody go hype again. You better run or sing again. Feel like wider than monks.
along with individuals like gentlemen who, I like to use the term, came to Jamaica and became extremely Jamaicanized, right down to the patois that is a referent for Jamaican music. Groups like Seed are very popular in Europe and in Germany, and our discussions would be located around whether or not this imitation, and Seed, that particular video reminds me a lot of TOK, who is very popular in Europe, very popular, and they had a particular music video from them apart, dressed in long black coats. It's a very, very similar. They are similar. You can see the appropriation of particular aspects of that music video in Music Monks, which was one of the very popular hits for Seed in Germany and in Europe. Appropriation or imitation, how do we locate this discussion about the protection of culture, the protection of music and cultural heritage within a national, regional, and international discussion? Is it even possible? And this is one of the questions that I ask myself. And in looking at where we are today, and where, for example, dancehall is, I want to play a section. This is the focus of my presentation in terms of where I conceptualize our location today. I'm playing a clip from Watch Out For This, which is Major Lazer, an American dancehall project promoted by Diplo, featuring Busy Signal and several others.
Yesterday is 92 degrees Fahrenheit on Kingston City streets, Thursday afternoon radio.
Please pay attention to the cultural reference in the video. Thank you. Watch out for this are the maddest lyrics. Mash up the place, number one. Mash up the place, put your hand up for this. You're not, yo, me nah miss number one on the list. The girl them a twist, I can't resist. And what this video is showcasing for me is a kind of hybrid kind of presentation where the key proponents are projected as Jamaican and all the cultural reference are there. It is the video is shot in the inner city. We have the Jamaican dancers, we have the fashion. We also have at the start of the music video, the using the Barry G on the radio and all the various reference to ensure that you are located and culturally referencing Jamaica. But if you look at that photograph which I have there, you can see in the background behind the dancers and Busy Signal that there are other actors who are now present inside of the music industry and with whom we will have to contend even while we talk about the message, the cultural meanings, and the rhythm. What is being transmitted? What are we transmitting in today's cultural frameworks, locally, regionally, and internationally? The indigenous cultural meanings are still locked in this instance to Jamaica and Jamaicanness because, of course, as we have heard in some of our earlier discussions, brand Jamaica gone larger, yard and broad, very big internationally and holds pride of place in the minds of many individuals who are Jamaican in the diaspora and non-Jamaican hoping to be, wannabe, loving Jamaica, or really just wanting to sample a slice of who we are. The cultural space, the geographical reference, the language, patois, expletives, and in that music video, quite a few expletives along the way. The style and fashion, the attitude, the dress, the dance, these are all aspects of what we are talking about in terms of protecting the music and all that it brings forward in terms of who we are as a people, Jamaica, Caribbean, and otherwise. How do we capture this and how do we ensure that as we move ahead with this thrust for protection, what is being transmitted and the cultural meanings that are locked within these different frames of reference are actually what we locate within our discussions? Is this even possible? And I ask the question. Some of the methods that are available, methods of protection that are available, protection under the traditional knowledge framework, and these are methods of protection for popular music, the geographical indications mechanism as well, the copyright discussion, and Dr. Howard alluded to this in his presentation quite significantly, particularly speaking about the Jamaican anti-copyright structure that we have developed in our music industry, because of course nothing is ever really original. And we too have borrowed and sampled quite significantly to get to this point where we are. And we should always keep that in mind very firmly when we move off into these discussions, that we too in Jamaica and in the region have borrowed quite significantly in seeding what we now see as an important component of our cultural heritage. Very critical. So these are some of the mechanisms that are available in terms of protection. The discussion and the challenge, of course, is how do we push the mechanisms? Most of us sitting in this room are not the creators of the intellectual property and the ideas and messages that come out in a lot of these artifacts that we are discussing. We ruminate on them, we research them, and we talk about them. We need, in a sense, a kind of strategic vision, I believe. What and why? Why are we focusing on this now? Is it because the world has moved in a particular direction and it is now au fait to talk about monetizing our cultural products in a way that was not once the norm? And this is something that as a culture and as a cultural location, we will have to grapple with quite significantly. Identification of the cultural relevant specifics, the rhythm, is it the message, the meaning, the history? We will, of course, need competent leadership in this way forward. Who will lead the thrust? Are we going to be using existing structures or developing new ones? JACAP, for example, is leading the thrust and has been moving forward very specifically. For example, that is why we are here at this conference. What about other actors on the plane? Java, JAMS, the universities, JACAP, how are they positioned in terms of helping to lead the thrust? Are they the only ones? My suggestion also includes getting creators involved and informed, getting the buy-in of the individuals on the ground who are the creators of these various artifacts. We find that there is a significant disconnect between discussions like these and the creators on the ground who are the very ones that need to be a part of the discussion to ensure that they are working through the structures locally, regionally, and internationally in a way that provides them with a level of protection when they engage, for example, in collaborative enterprises and or do what I consider to be something that we trip ourselves up very often, give away the keys to our culture. I call it that. Oftentimes we give away the keys to our culture without even recognizing that we are so doing. Strengthen the competitive advantage. Jamaica equals the home of reggae and dancehall. This is an undisputed fact. It is undisputed. But in terms of strengthening the competitive advantage, we have already begun finding mechanisms and ways to do so. For example, this is February, and it has also been designated Reggae Month since 2008, an official designation. And there are efforts being made to pull back to Jamaica the individuals who wish to make, for example, pilgrimages to Jamaica for Reggae Month. So we have a decent, I would say, not an overwhelming flow. It's not a tidal way, but we have a slightly, yes, Joan, I know you agree with me, a decent trickle of individuals, mainly journalists and individuals who are using the culture for their own to create content, who come to Jamaica in February. We need to strengthen our culture, our competitive advantage to ensure that in all discussions that Jamaica becomes a central reference point when we are dealing with anything to do with Jamaican popular music. Maintain the cultural relevance of Jamaican music. I am not a fan of this push for standardization and trying to sound like the international arena. There's a strong discussion about we should sound a certain way to ensure that we make it in the international market. Jamaican music made it in the international market, sounding off-key, being sung in the language of Jamaica, being done by the people of Jamaica and our creators and artists in the way that they felt comfortable, which they identified with themselves as Jamaicans. And so any thrust forward must continue to ensure that this is so. And of course, in terms of professionalizing the industry, develop and maintain strong management structures so that, for example, individuals are able to understand more clearly what kind of contractual arrangements are best. We have entertainment lawyers. We have developed a reasonably good structure. We have the copyright structures, but in terms of maintaining management structures, it's critical that we maintain not just a hustle type of structure, but also a structures that are professional and structures that will help our creators, those who actually work in the field of the creative industries where music is concerned, to develop and manage what they do. And of course, monitor collaborations and joint ventures. I keep asking myself when I see music videos like, watch out for this, are we really watching? Who benefits the most from a project like that? Is it Major Lazer and the crew? Is it Busy Signal? How much do we benefit? And you will recall that track, Boom My Ye, you have seen it rendered in various commercials, international commercials. The Pepsi commercial with the footballer juggling, I didn't put that on it. It is rendered, it has gone very far and is doing very well. And so, the impact of protection, what are some of the impacts? And I see, looking at protection and looking at locating Jamaican popular music in various structures that will help us to see it as something that is valuable, as a positive step. My stance is always positive. Recognizing that intellectual properties and intellectual property rights are powerful and potential tools for economic development and social and cultural well-being, very important. Positives on the music, the development of the music, the refinement of the production process, heightening the marketing of the music, expanding the market for the music, and for the country of origin, it can only have multiple social, economic, and cultural benefits. I see any move to protect our music, whether we have the music tabled under the Intangible Cultural Heritage Trust, or focusing more on stronger copyright legislation and moving our creators into a greater relationship with copyright as a positive move, particularly when the creators of the music currently receive a mere trickle, in many instances, of the value and the true earnings of their products. Negatives, and we have spoken, and I hear a little murmur in the front, Chris Blackwell. 5 minutes, thank you. And some of the negatives, we are told that at times having too strong a protective regime can stifle creative potential because individuals will feel limited in terms of their ability to move, limit the ability or the activity to the individual creators and owners as opposed to a community of creators. These are some of the negatives that are often discussed. Limiting the activity of non-Jamaican actors, I'm not sure if that is as much a negative as it could be an opportunity for more collaboration. And I have a question underneath it. Is this possible in the current era? Is it even possible with the global spread outwards of Jamaican music and culture to limit the activity of non-Jamaican actors in the way that it has exploded in the current era? Another negative, we are told, could be restricting the open access, which for many creators of the music has acted as a form of marketing, particularly where it serves as an opportunity to make these creators and their products known to a wider audience, and so serve as a kind of pull factor to get them engagements abroad, which serve as a part of the income generation activities of this sector. National, regional benefit of protection, economic, a very big plus. And this is, of course, a quote from the 2009 Vision 2030 document, which reminded us at that time that the Jamaican music was accounting for about $1 billion of world music sales. That was in 2003, of which, and we have spoken about this, the trickle-down effect meant that Jamaica received a quarter of this, or maybe less. Protection would help to increase the capacity of the artists and other creators to collect more earnings from the production of the music, the production of the creative and cultural facets that go into the music, and would thus benefit different layers, the individual, the industry, the community, and of course the national and regional framework. Developmental. Protecting the IP and cultural heritage in popular music forms secures the interests of the owner and their communities. It also boosts the economy and creates opportunities and increases employment, particularly in a period when there are shrinking opportunities for employment for many young people and not so young people coming up. It has to only positively impact GDP and spurs development of the society in a very real way. And so these are some of the more positive national and regional benefits of protection that could accrue from the structures. Who will benefit? And I repeat again, the owners of the intellectual property and those who are a part of their general framework. Secondary producers, for example, in the music industry, we have various individuals who work along with the creators to ensure that the product is put out in the final format, that it is recognized and utilized. The overall music industry, the communities of which they're a part, and the country that many of them either reside in or ply their trade in the main. So my closing thoughts. Protection of Jamaican music secures our rights to our culture and cultural heritage, and that is a critical and very important component of the discussion that we have been having. But it also provides, in a real sense, opportunities for national and regional creators of the music to enhance the quality of their lives. People must be fed. Bread costs money. And it spurs the impetus for national, regional, and international collaborations, which will help, of course, to continue to enhance the spread of Jamaican music in the international arena. It enhances professionalism, and it encourages new entrants to creative industry sector. And so for my own overview and thought on the process, looking at the various pieces of documentation and listening to some of our speakers, it could have only, in the main, a positive impact, particularly on the lives of those who have really put their sweat, blood, and tears through and into the creation of Jamaican popular music and other forms of music in the Caribbean. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hope. Okay, so we're going to move into our final speaker. Representing JACAP, Ms. Lydia Rose, General Manager of JACAP. Ms. Rose is the General Manager since 2012. Of course, JACAP administers the rights of composers, authors, and publishers of musical works in Jamaica and internationally. She currently holds the post of Chair for the Management Committee of the Association of Caribbean Copyright Societies. She's a former director of JIPO, a former member of the Advisory Committee on Communications for UNESCO, and was part of the UNESCO team involved in a proposal on behavioral change communication as it relates to music in young adults. Ms. Rose started her now 17 years career in the music industry when she left the telecoms industry in '96 to become general manager for Anchor Group of Companies, which comprises a recording studio, music works, dubplate, music publishers, and Anchor Media Products. She holds an MSc degree in international business and a BSc in management and accounting from UWI. Please help me to welcome Ms. Lydia Rose.
Afternoon, everyone, and all protocols observed. And I'm glad that JIPO has given me the opportunity to actually speak to you from the industry perspective. As an industry practitioner, I would say that protection of our music throughout the Caribbean is very important, but the problem that I will have is that really music is an art form that forms part of the creative industry. And can music in and of itself be protected? So I will postulate that we don't really need to protect the music because we encourage people and we advise and we want people to use our music, but we should protect the music as a brand. And there's a lot of Caribbean genres of music, which has been stated before, so I'll move on. In protecting the brands, there are various things that we should do. The rights holders, they have the most important part to play. Then we have the branding, we have the industry development, we have enforcement, and of course we have the difficulty and challenges of PIOLA. Rights holders under copyright, they have exclusive rights which protects the individual creators. And apart from creating the work, right holders have to and must. The most important thing is to write great songs. Bob Marley, One Love, stands the test of time. There's a practitioner in the industry that always say, and I hear it every day, that a song makes a singer, and not a singer, a song. And when Tessan was on our quest and sang Many Rivers to Cross, that's another generation using a song that has stand the test of time. So in order to protect our own, we must create great songs. And also after creating the song, we must ensure that the creators are identified and given their full due. The various music forms should be viewed as a brand. And I will postulate that as government advertise tourism and they advertise extensively, that just as they say, sand and beach and the hotel, they can add reggae to it. And I was going to show a YouTube video, which my learned friend, Dr. Hope, did touch on, but luckily for me, she didn't play it all the way to the end, but I will, because at the very end of that YouTube video is a very telling statement by the broadcaster, and I want you to hear it. And my entire presentation going forward will be based on that last sentence. So we will hear it again. But this time I want you to just listen to it in its entirety and pay attention to branding. In that video, in that YouTube video, they speak about reggae. Reggae is spoken several times. Jamaica, and the question is asked several times. So the branding of it is really what needs to be protected.
All by white Americans. Joining us to talk about this tonight is Felicia Prasad. And Felicia, I find this fascinating. What do you think is the reason behind this?
It really is a fascinating story, Cara. I think it's, it's all about the gentrification of the genre and groups that grew up on Bob Marley, and they've been singing indie reggae in the underground for reggae group, and they sing reggae that is more of the spiritual side, and that's all Americans, and they're all the reggae scene. Then you've got Josh Heinrich. He's been around forever in the indie reggae scene. He's actually entering at number 2 with Rooftop Sessions, and they're all in the number 5. So 7 out of the top 10, they're all white, they're all non-Jamaicans, all Americans, and they're all taking up the top 7 of the 10 spots.
Wow, we're showing some video now of Fortunate Youth. That is just one of the groups at the top of the Billboard charts this week. Felicia, have you had a chance to listen to any of these groups? Are they any good?
They are so good. We talked about Snoop Lion going reggae. Snoop Lion has nothing on these guys. These guys really have the same rhythm, the same message. They sound incredible, and I think that is really what fans are looking at. Because, Cara, the Billboard charts are determined by album sales, and so they have to be good for fans to be buying these albums. But it really is interesting, coming from the fact that Jamaica originated reggae. It was largely black music, and now it's become such a gentrified genre. It is really, really mind-boggling. I think people are going to find this extremely interesting, but it is really a similar message. Very, very good rhythm from these guys. So great job to all of these guys.
Yeah, we're listening to some of the music and seeing some of the video now by Revolution, another one of the bands that was at the top of the charts. Lastly, Felicia, what's the reaction from Jamaican artists?
Actually, a lot of folks are just like coming into this news, so it is going to be interesting to see how people react. We have only three of Jamaican artists who are black and from Jamaica on the charts. Bob Marley is still on the chart somehow with his Marley original tracks. And we've got at the number 9 and number 10 spot, a reggae compilation, and Jimmy Cliff. So those are the only Jamaicans on the chart. We don't have any of the other big names, and so it is really, really interesting and fascinating at the same time, but I think really good news as well.
Yeah, turning of the tides a little bit.
And as she said, the turning of the tides. And we must reflect in ourselves, really, what is the turning of the tides? Is it in our favor? Is it in the international favor? What is it that we are going to do? Are we going to protect what we have so that we can and earn, as Dr. Hope said, from it? Without the creator, there is no cultural industry. That's another saying that I hear every day from the persons who come to my office. The music industry is a significant component of the cultural industry. Therefore, what we need to do is not, if there's no industry in and of itself, what is it we're going to protect? So therefore, today I am actually being a lobbyist. I'm saying that we need to develop this industry. We need to go back to where we were. We need to write great songs. We need to put ourselves back out on the map. And therefore, industry development must be at the forefront of any cultural policy. As without a vibrant, growing industry, there can be no protection. Right now, the vibrancy is on the international market. We need to bring it back to Jamaica. We need to ensure that what we produce can compete and compete well with what is out there. And therefore, a major laser, whoever is coming here, they will have to contend with us and not us contending with them. And in this way, there are various arguments that people speak about in terms of protection of music. And my argument and my lobby today is that one way of protecting and developing our music is to have a broadcasting quota for local music. A lot of persons will not agree, but there have been a lot of countries that have used it to their advantage. Right now, Justin Bieber is from Canada. Canada has a quota. France, they have all developed their industry by using the quota method. And there are various rationales for quota, brings about cultural diversity, but the most important one for me is number 3, to defend culture and economic activity, because it is our bread and butter in the industry. It also encourages local cultural creation. In my office every day, a lot of young persons, they come and they said, there's no outlet for them to play their music. And when I speak to the broadcasters say, well, they're not playing quality music. And I said to the broadcasters, but that's subjective. Let the public decide. Put all the music out there. I mean, in terms, just like a capitalist, the good ones will stay, and, you know, the market will take care of that, not persons in an office taking care of it for us. And countries with quota requirements, I've put Nigeria there as the most one that has really stood out for me. The quota for broadcasting local music is 80% in Nigeria. And why it is? Because for them, music is considered to be a cornerstone of traditional life and rituals. We talk about our heritage and everything, and from I was born, I'm hearing music in Jamaica. So really, is it our cornerstone? What is it we are doing to actually protect the music that we say that we live on day in and day out? For JACAP, I've done this chart to show the influence of foreign music on our society and in terms of the payout that JACAP make to our members. As we can see, from 2008 to 2012, the payout overseas is just increasing because the amount of foreign music that is played on our radio far far, far. I don't know what, I mean, you can see from the chart what it is. It influences our day-to-day life. It has taken the younger generation know a lot of Jay-Z songs more than Jesse Royal who sang last night. As a 4-year-old can sing a Beyonce song, don't know most of our young a chronic song. So we need to actually do something to stop that in its track. And that also shows, the orange shows how much also go overseas and not retained in the economy. Yeah. That chart also, I put up that chart which is from PSOJ to show how much the government actually is earning from the music industry, and that 80 point something million, and that is just on parties. We have parties almost every day in Jamaica. And I'm saying that to fund the quota or whatever it is, because from the money that they make, they can do grant funding to our younger generation. I mean, how much of our creators know how to write and read music? Quite a lot have not gone to school. It's just raw talent. So we need to harness that talent and to do something about it. And I think government can contribute to that. Another way of protecting our legacy, not our music, is by copyright term extension. And Bob Marley OM was giving us, I mean, it influenced millions throughout the world. I mean, there is nothing more we can say about what he has done for our creative industry. And the fact that the government is deciding on whether to extend or not to extend, it is just something that I'm not understanding right now. And we need to ensure that the term is extended from 50 years so that the legacy created by our forefathers can still be there, it can be continued. And also the fact that we're now in a digital age, and how much of these works can, if the copyright term is not extended, will enjoy commercialization in the digital age? I mean, we need to also consider that. I am part of the licensing body that deals with enforcement, and my learned friend Howard spoke about the fees that JACAP and JAMS charge and how it's affecting the industry. But for us as a licensing body is, why does the users continue to think that they can use music freely? There are exceptions and that they should use, but as with any other profession, it's a profession for us. And we need to ensure that we can earn. So it is not a matter of charging high fees. It's just a matter that in Jamaica, it is low compliance. Broadcasters use music every day. They do not want to pay. And I think that something needs to be done about that. And then that will lead, and then that we are also lobbying again for compulsory licensing. I know. Right? Compulsory licensing. I mean, we had worked out something with the police, but there is something in the act where it needs to be aligned with the time period. And it worked fine until the promoters who want to use the music freely decided that, hey, but wherein I have to get a police permit in 10 days, I don't have to get one from JACAP until 24 hours. So that in and of itself, the Copyright Act needs to be brought in line to ensure that compulsory licensing can be done to protect what we have. And then the last thing I'll speak about is payola and how it affects the development of the industry. And Ms. Salmon from Broadcasting Commission, I've used her picture. I hope I won't be sued for image rights. But that is to show that the Broadcasting Commission has decided to do something about payola. And they have submitted a paper to Parliament, so we'll wait and see how that work out. And that is something also that is stifling the industry, because for us as practitioners, we cannot understand where international music is used to the extent where it is played 80%, and for us local practitioners and record producers to get our music play, we have to, there's some payment that has to be done. So I would have thought that if you're paying, then more of the local content would be played, but that is not so. So payola also stifles the industry. So the way forward, government need to address the loophole in the Copyright Act so that compulsory licensing can be done. We need local content quota. And another issue, which again I'm lobbying for the Caribbean, is that when we make payment to our counterparts in the region, withholding tax to all our government is as much as 25%, while when we pay to ASCAP and the BMI, it is as low as 10%. So that again is robbing our creators in the region of what they should get. And I think it's about time the CARICOM deal with this issue, because it really affects us. So all the above issues are dependent on government policies, and they cannot afford to continue to sit on the sideline while profiting from the creative industry. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Rose. A lot of new stuff you brought there despite the so many panelists before you. Thanks for that. Okay, so now we have approximately 25 minutes for questions and answers for any of the panelists on any of the topics that were raised or any of the comments. Yes, please ask any questions of any of the panelists that you wish, or make comments as you wish. Ms. Bell? I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, quick question. I'm probably a financier in this room, and probably at the risk of offending the academics in the room. I wanted to know, I found all your presentations very interesting, and I actually started the beginning of the presentations with one point of view and ended it at another point of view. But my focus is on economic development and on how we can monetize this industry so that our bank of entertainers and creators can actually derive from it. So I wanted to ask Mr. Howard a specific question, Dr. Howard, because I grasped from his point of view that he thought that our industry had developed in the context of no copyright, and our creativity had not been stifled, and there was something to be said for that, and I do agree. How would you respond to JACAP in terms of the need to create ownership so that you can monetize and then derive the economic benefits, and where is the balance between not stifling the creativity and at the same time creating ownership and thereby being able to monetize it?
I am not advocating that we should not adhere to copyright legislation. I'm just stating a fact. We had a 1913 Copyright Act which was disregarded and virtually unknown to a lot of people in the industry. Yet these same people, when they interface with the international marketplace, some of them signed to PRS in England, and they benefited. So it was a dual kind of situation. When the Whalers was signed to Ireland, they had proper publishing deals and copyright stuff. So I am not saying, I'm just stating a fact that because of this looseness, they developed all kind of different things that probably would not have developed in terms of innovation without that loosening. But we're in a different time now, so we need to be compliant while recognizing the cultural reality of what was happening before. And there are all kinds of mechanisms to facilitate that, because you talk about the Creative Commons. And a lot of people, because of I tell you, right now, because of weak institutional frameworks that exist in this country, we creatively develop ways of bringing artists to the fore. And one of the ways of bringing artists to the fore is an apprenticeship. An artist burst, like a Beanie Man or a Bounty Killer, 500 man behind him. They write songs for these people. You can't go to these persons and say to them, listen, you're writing songs for Bounty Killer, Beanie Man, whoever. Go to them with a split sheet. It's not going to happen. Because when they weigh the delayed remunerations from things that sometimes, they will say, I will prefer to stick with Beanie Man and Bounty Killer and these guys who don't want me to be around if I encourage this. This is not to say that it doesn't happen. A lot of these guys have arrangements with these big artists. But sometimes they are very reluctant to insist on these legal issues. So we have to also look at that.
Thank you. Again, as the last speaker just said, I have to thank JAIPO and WIPO. I thought that, and the presenters, each of you were so nuanced that it was as if, as you thought of something else, the next person came up and addressed it, and that was really appreciated. I'll begin with my brief observation where Lydia kind of cut it in that for me, it's, as we say in Jamaica, balance to the thing. It's both sides of the thing. Whilst we strive and seek to protect it, we need to, in the same way, seek to profit and benefit from it and do so unashamedly. So, for example, when Miss Westby spoke about Belize, I felt as if, with respect, we were only seeing one side of the picture, because whilst it's correct to say that there's no one owner with respect to perhaps the writer and the creator, surely when these CDs are manufactured, there is a one owner with respect to the producer. So the producer's right is still being respected. And if the performer is put up on YouTube, then I'm sure the performer's right is still being respected. So somewhere in that loop, copyright is there, and that's what's facilitating making money. And it's that economic incentive that gives a record label like Kumbacha the incentive to then spread this music around the world. So your objective is met. And I think that we shouldn't feel ashamed to benefit from it. Dr. Hope kind of really touched on that, and she saw me nodding like I was in church at the time, because I think it's our biggest challenge here in the Caribbean. I don't know if it's a colonial hangover, but we equate making money with meaning that it's a negative thing always, that it's exploitive, or that you're somehow, you have sacrificed the pureness of the art, when in reality we live in a world where things aren't free. And I think there's no more noble pursuit rather than to try and make money in a legal and sustainable way than through the arts. I think that's something we should be proud of. So those are my brief kind of, I mean, there were so many things, but I can see the line behind me and I don't want to hug it. I do want to ask Regan a question, though, because I think it's important for us here in Jamaica to hear the answer. You mentioned that with the Genesis PAN, that it was filed in several jurisdictions, the PCT filing. Yes. And similarly, that the trademark application was filed in several jurisdictions. Was that done under the Madrid Protocol, or was it done separately? And also, did the actual filer pay those fees on their own, or were they assisted by the government of Trinidad? Because that's a reality when you're drilling down here. I often feel like we hand people a basket to carry water, again, a Jamaican saying, because we tell them to go out there and benefit themselves to really protect and have economic sustainability or whatever from their projects, but it's not so easy to do.
Thank you, Joan. Very good questions. The reality is that although Trinidad and Tobago are going to probably take steps to adhere to the Madrid Protocol, we're still under the Paris Convention, so we still adhere to national filings. So they were all filed individually for the trademarks individually under the Paris system for the Convention of Industrial Property. And as for the patent, you asked, yeah, the money was paid through the government, because it's actually owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
So the Genesis PAN is actually owned by the government, and so even all of the individual filings. I just want to kind of underscore the point that it's a very time-intensive and costly procedure for the individual creators. So whilst we're looking, you know.
And you're correct, especially with the patents, you know, you have to pay the annuities. So there needs to be constant follow-up, and it's a very expensive exercise, as you realize, because of the amount of jurisdictions that it would have been filed in. So I hope I cleared up.
No, thank you. And thanks again to the presenters. It was an awesome panel.
Greetings. It's a very interesting
amount of information that was presented today, and I assume in the earlier 2 days. But my concern is that I did not hear the actual economic construct of the industry, the actual one, not the one that is like a kind of fairy tale, because the music was developed in a colonial period, right? Where the government's thought and responsibility was to protect a certain class of people. And so as the music was being generated and created collectively, because we're a collective culture, and this music is a response to slavery. It's just like the Garifuna people, it is coming out of that. So as we are creating it, the collective creation is a part of our culture. But who was on the other end of that collective creativity in terms of the production and the distribution and manufacturing was a class that was used to the plantation relationship, and so that relationship continued constructively, right? So as the creators were creating in this manner, right, the people on the other end in terms of the production end were all plantation, kind of mentality that took away those rights, had no respect for the people with their rights, and they just took it all away with that. It remains today. So all of our foundation music, from the Scatterlights, the Wailers, etc., are governed under those conditions. It is now before the government, as Ms. Rose said, to extend the copyright in a manner that is beneficial to these early artists, etc. And they've been stalling for years, putting our music back into the public domain at the behest of the international marketplace, where Christopher Blackwell, you have to understand, in 1962, Christopher Blackwell, in the independence of Jamaica, moved the infrastructure of Jamaica into England for the record industry, and developed an infrastructure of taking away, right, of these rights, taking away the rights of Clement Dodd, taking away the rights of Duke Reed, taking away all of these rights, developing these companies in England, transferring these and selling them now to Universal, and no one is analyzing, right, these constructs to say, well, how are we going to determine if you want to get it back and you haven't determined how it left and how it is remain? How are you going to stay within Jamaica, understanding there's no industry in Jamaica, there's no record industry in Jamaica because there's no company here? VP Records, Randy's, everybody moved away into the international markets, and that's where they stay. So there's nobody here to make best practices to educate the artists. This is not about the artist. There's no responsibility of the artist. The responsibility is the growth of an industry. So if there's no industrial responsibility where the artist knows that they can sign a contract here in Jamaica, there's no need to sign a contract here in Jamaica because there's no company here. You understand what I'm saying? The companies are abroad. You don't get a contract until you reach the VP, Greensleeves, Island, etc. So if we are not analyzing that and plugging it into the reality here of creating some kind of macro, large industrial base here in Jamaica, how are we gonna figure this thing out? So Universal, Sony, all of these people now, what do they do internationally? They go into countries and they create joint ventures in the country, right? It doesn't fly out and you go and do a deal there for China or any of these countries. These companies come here just like any other Diego or whoever doing with Red Stripe. They come here to the point of origin and they do a joint venture here. If that doesn't occur, all of this is wishful thinking, because the international, the market for our goods are external. So we cannot attract external producers to come and joint venture with us in Jamaica, command them to come here, right? And don't follow the pattern that was developed by Chris Blackwell, where he carried our industry out, followed by the migration of the middle class in the 70s or whatever. And we don't analyze that we don't have nothing here. This was why we were batting for the development of a Jamaica Reggae Museum with an intellectual property engine that could at least create a macro, large
kind of organization that all the intellectual property rights of the artists, etc., who have not been able to manage this, this development. So all of this that I'm hearing, without those type of analysis, I think we're going nowhere. The next thing is that the community for the music, for reggae, and the intangible cultural heritage. I did not hear anything about the Rastafari community. I heard about Trenchtown, and I heard about 9 Miles. These are places, these are not communities. The fact that Robert Marley was born in 9 Mile gives nothing to 9 Miles, other than he was born there. 9 Miles did not contribute to the development of reggae. A person being born somewhere does not make a community, right? So the community that is addressed here for the intangible cultural heritage is clearly the Rastafari community. I haven't heard anything. I saw the picture of how reggae is used in the promotion. It used the colors yellow, red, and green, but it had no respect for the Rastafari community use of the colors, which is a particular formation. So the fact that you use reggae and you stroke the colors like that is the continuing marginalization of this community. And with the marginalization of the community, there'll be no rights getting under UNESCO. Because if this community is not given its proper presentation within the music industry, you're not going to get anywhere. Because even though the music is selling out there, what it is promoting is the lifestyle industries. This is the largest industry out there now. The thing that is coming from merchandising. What is being merchandised? The Rastafari culture, right? That is the largest economic spin-off. So if you are not focused on that and analyzing that and incorporating that in your analysis, we're not going anywhere under UNESCO or any of these things.
Give thanks, give thanks. I want to ask Howard or Dr. Lindsay.
Are we to respond? Was there a question? There wasn't a question. A statement was made.
No statement.
Yeah, greetings. I just want to come from the point of view of the perception of ourselves, right? As if nothing is happening and nothing now go on and ray. I had the privilege of working with the I3s in 1980 when they opened for Bob Marley. The point that this is all going to lead to is the need for a buy-in from not just the government in Jamaica, not just the quota argument from Ms. Rose, which I support, but from the media in particular. On that 1980 tour of Europe, right, the BMW Motor Corporation gave Bob permission to use the BMW insignia on his tour jacket, right? The attendance records for all the major rock groups in Europe to that point were broken by Bob Marley and the Wailers on that tour, right? A fact that I've never seen or heard anywhere in the Jamaica media. I'm not saying it hasn't been there, but I've never seen or heard it, right? Fast forward to present day, or to last year, right? Mr. Livingston sitting here has his choice of touring or not touring whenever and wherever he wishes. I had the privilege, again, of working with a group called Israel Vibration, who were on tour in Europe, right? And all the major festivals, about 20 or 22 of them or so, had some of the younger acts, right, now active in the business, Chronics, Protégé, Julian Marley, and so on, and those in closing capacities. The point of all of this is that we need to buy into supporting ourselves, right? This anti-Jamaican copyright perception of some of the older generation of artists, right? Not all, just some, right? Now redounding to their own misbenefit, if there is such a word, because now we are hearing every day, right? Every single day, there's someone in JACAP asking about what you know about what him named there and what she named there, who was in the business from whenever. Right? One of the ways, Dr. Hope, to get these persons, right, to come to these seminars is to do like Dr. Cooper does, right? You invite your subjects. They should not just be subjects for interviews and information gathering, right? You invite them to these things, right? And maybe, just maybe, right, I can tell you that the young generation now of music creators and practitioners are very aware of these things. A lot of them are getting hip to how you stream stuff and put stuff up on YouTube and all the rest of it and monetize it, right? But the types of studies that have been done and the kind of information that I've heard just for the past 2 days, I wasn't here on the opening day, there is no shortage of expertise, right? And again, I'm challenging Jaipo. I did so yesterday, I'm doing so today again, right? To get all these people together, please, once and for all, and let us just stop pussyfooting around with this business, right? The whole thing is that all of this information here, all of the information from yesterday, and all of the information from Monday are right here in Jamaica, you know. And yet, Dr. Cooper have our seminar, Dr. Hope have our seminar, Dr. Nayagwe have a seminar. We have about 19 different seminars going on, and no policy recommendation is coming out of any of these things, and they will cost government. Right? Please, I'm begging Jaipo, right, again, just put all the experts them in the same place, and at the end of the something, say to government, see the document here, pass the law. I had the privilege, I think I can call his name now. He's no longer the Director General of WIPO, right? I won't call his name, okay. But the point of the matter is that, no, we are at a seminar in Antigua, and the gentleman says, and I can't work it out, when he's intelligent people. The gentleman says, listen, just sign, no, in Antigua, just sign off on this thing now. Once the Director General put something in place in WIPO, succeeding Directors General can't change it, you know. And the minister from Guyana wouldn't sign off. No, the meeting was in Antigua. The minister from Guyana wouldn't sign off. And now here we are talking about the same things again. Yeah. Please, maybe just stop talking and start do something now. No?
Good afternoon. Steve really touched a bit of what I was going to speak on, but firstly, I really have to. I'm coming from Trinidad, representing the Copyright Music Organization of Trinidad and Tobago, COT, as the CEO, and my partner Lydia as a sister society. Really have to commend JACAP, not just on the initiative, but the holistic approach that I can see that you've taken and have been taking within the creative sector to really nurture the creative sector. I could tell you that you've been discussing a lot of the challenges here and in Jamaica, and with the, putting a lot of challenges to the Intellectual Property Office in Jamaica, but you are miles ahead. I could tell you in terms of your support for your creative sectors, and that is really commendable. And I really have to thank WIPO for the continued support on these types of initiatives. And I think it's important that coming out of seminars, it's not just, okay, that was a good 3 days, but really, I think we spoke policy, we spoke a lot of policy. We have to really speak engagement as well, and part of what I see as a challenge happening in Trinidad, and it was mentioned by Steve too, is the disconnect. A lot of different groups meet and talk and have their separate seminars and discussions, but there's a lack of connect. So for example, we talk about the fair value for the use of music. and it came up in terms of promoters speaking about the high fees and what have you. And we've been engaging our promoters in Trinidad and to realize that they are being taxed by the police service they have to have a certain amount of police at their event, and they have charges there. They have the fire service, they have charges there. They're doing an all-inclusive event, so they have a lot of different charges involved. And if that is the case, it is important that all the stakeholders actually speak to address these issues, but more importantly, ensure that protection and the value for the use of music the creators are compensated, because without music, there's no life. There's no life without music, and we have to really stress and understand that point. So I think, and in essence, what I'm just saying, well, 2 points, and then I'll have a question. Really, the policy, engagement, development, and support. Those are some of key elements that are critical. So this development, engaging all the stakeholders, the key ones, and I really want to challenge this. This is a regional conference, so there are governments represented from most of the Caribbean islands here. I really think, we may have within the sessions referred to a few countries, but I think this is an opportunity for each country to take away particular action items that you could now use to further develop the creative sector within your territories. And I think that's a very, very crucial thing. But I guess I'll throw it. Has a lot to the question, but I'll ask it all the same, and it may have come out through the session. But how can we talk the same language? Is my question. How can we talk the same language so that we can further develop the creative sector? That's my question.
I just want us to think a little bit about from the international perspective to answer your question. Well, I don't even know if I should attempt to answer the question, but perhaps what we can do, think about how we can position ourselves as a region when we take advantage of the international instruments that are in place. I think it's something we overlook quite a bit, that there are these instruments that can actually guide us, put us on the right path. So it is a step towards knowing exactly what we need to do within our local environments. And certainly it will be somewhat of a push in the communities as well. So I'm suggesting that perhaps we need to look at it. I think we have not been paying significant attention to the International Convention on Intangible Cultural Heritage enough. And this convention is about a decade old, and we really are not tapping into what is there, and the fact that this convention offers us a lot of protection and some of the concerns that we talk about. I mean, just referencing, for example, the issue that was brought up about not paying homage to the Rastafarian community as we should. If you look at what the convention offers, these are specific issues that really tackle that. So we understand that when we talk about community, it's not just about the geographical location, but community as a social grouping, the Rastafari group, and that they have made an awesome and continue to make significant contribution to the development of music. So I really believe, my very opinion is that we need to look a little bit more at the international instruments that are in place.
Excuse me. I just wanted to follow up the last gentleman's question about how do we speak the same language, and also talk to your issue of the how to kind of work together within the constructs of the UNESCO mandate, but also with the community people. What I'm actually suggesting, and what we're doing with a company called Lyric Find, is working on actually the translations of the lyrics, so that we can actually understand songs from the Garifuna language and from Patois and from all the other languages, and that the people in China can, and the people in Brazil can, and the people in Russia can. And to me, that's the biggest opportunity for the music from Jamaica or from any culture. And it also has the opportunity to actually go not only to the publishers, and the woman's discourse about the publishers really kind of being stolen from Jamaica was really, really valuable information for me, but also to the songwriters eventually, or direct through the songwriters depending upon what the laws are. So I think just to actually throw it open to everybody here, what we're actually suggesting is not only legal, authorized, monetized lyrics, which are the songs, but also legal, authorized, and monetized lyric translations. And the company that I'm working with is actually the largest aggregator of these rights from the major publishers, from the worldwide publishers, but also from the independent publishers in each one of your countries, directly, usually through the Performing Rights Society. And in those cases, the Performing Rights Society can actually be the gateway so that the original creators get paid for that and get compensated where they might not be getting compensated from their overseas partners. So I'm doing a speech tomorrow also and showing some of these technologies at the Open University, and I know you have workshops, but for the people in the audience who don't have this opportunity, I'd love to invite you to come. It starts at 1 o'clock at the Randy Williams Entertainment Center, and my presentation is at about 3 o'clock. So thank you very much, though.
Okay.
Greetings. Well, give thanks for all you wonderful people that are here in discussing these things that surrounds this great music coming out of Jamaica, known as the reggae, coming from the ska, rock steady, and is now the focus of dancehall and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm here as a survivor of the Wailers, Robert Marley, Peter Tosh, Junior Brathwaite, and we also got a sister that is still alive in the Wailers, Sister Beverly, that a lot of people don't know much or talk much about, but she has been and will always be an original member of the Wailers. I have been listening to all the stuff that is related to this music. And I've been here from 1963 with the Wailers, singing from Simmer Down till right now I'm singing like Ram Dance Hall. And as far as this growth of the music is concerned, it has been benefiting people globally. That even Snoop Dogg trying to change his name to Lion because I called him so, is now focusing on, you know, going on as if reggae music does not also belong to the Jamaican people. And I'm seeing a lot of, you know, foreign artists being involved that are making millions of dollars out of this music, while Jamaica is making none. And I hear, what's her name, the Prime Minister, come to say that we don't have any money. And I don't think that is good, coming from a Prime Minister that is in charge of reggae music that comes out of Jamaica, and Robert Marley as the symbol of this music. I am still here playing reggae music. I have now a 50 track of Bunny Wailer original tracks, Reincarnated Souls, that I'm now getting ready to put out for the people of the world who has been involved with reggae, to be focusing on the reincarnation of our existence, so that reggae music could still be with us for us to embrace and to pass on to generations and generations to come. So I am giving thanks for all the people here and all the wonderful people who have been recognizing and respecting this great music, playing it, and making a lot of money from it. People like Chris Blackwell. I would like to make sure that the benefits that should be given to the people that have been the creators of this great music is something that is recognized by us as we speak here, to make sure that futuristically the people that play this great music will somehow benefit from this great ska, rocksteady, and reggae music. Big up every time.
Give thanks, Jabi. All right, well, it's been a very interesting, lively session and fairly long too, you know, so thanks for staying. We're going to go right into our closing ceremony, so please stay with us. I'd like to thank our panelists, though. From my right, Mrs. Candace Westby. From Belize, Regan Asgarali from Trinidad. Dr. Dennis Howard from Jamaica. Dr. Janice Lindsay from Jamaica. Dr. Hope and Miss Lydia Rose. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to invite our copyright manager, Miss Marissa Longsworth, to proceed with our closing.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Amazing 3 days. I mean, I am blown away by the success of this conference, the things that we've managed to get out and to get, you know, some of there is frustration, and we understand, and we want to hear it, and we want to know the issues so that we can address them as well. So we're going to do very quick closing, so that we can just have some last-minute comments from our Executive Director and Mr. Ganchev from WIPO. So we had fantastic panel discussions, and the audience was so lively and participated so honestly and so candidly. We have to say thanks to WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Organization. They've been an amazing source of support and funding for us. We're also grateful and would like to capitalize on this momentum, because if nothing else came out, it was momentum, it was energy, it was a vibe and a drive for more. And we got a lot of information over the past 3 days, and we're ready to formulate an action plan of strategic moves to put things in place that will stimulate the creative industries, particularly in the advancement of IP, not only on an institutional level, but more importantly amongst individual creators who play just as important a role as we do in the government as well. So, our sponsors, I have to say thank you. They made this possible. Our parent ministry, the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. We had the Tourism Enhancement Fund, Exim Bank Jamaica, RJR 94 FM, and Television Jamaica, the Gleaner Company Limited, and the PBCJ. And with their help and support, we had a great conference. We had the shopping hub. I hope that you all shopped in the shopping hub with things Jamaican from JBDC. And we also managed to have a lovely Jamaica night last night for our visitors. So at this point in time, I'd like to introduce once again Mr. Dimitar Ganchev from WIPO to give his closing remarks.
Thank you, Marissa, and thanks everyone. Every time I come to Jamaica, I think that you already have a great and functioning creative economy, so I'm wondering, why am I here? Indeed, it has been 3 days, as always, very rich, very open discussion. I noted that at the end of the day, we usually had more people than we had in the beginning of the proceedings, which is a good sign. So apparently you found this worthwhile. Let's hope that we have delivered some interesting information to you. I don't know whether it was all new. I hope, Steve, that at least some of it was new. And I really want to thank you for making this possible. Without you, this would not have been any interesting conference. Now I think it definitely is. And it is so different from all other similar conferences that we've done in other parts of the world. We have not been able to cover all the creative sectors. Of course, we had to leave out some important areas. So those of you who did not find enough reference to their area of work should excuse us. Simply time was not enough, and it doesn't mean that these sectors are not important. We simply had to pick up the ones that we felt had not been covered enough in our similar activities in the past. Now, what are some of the themes that I take away from this conference? First of all, clearly, creative economy is something, and creative industry is a global phenomenon, but you have a very specific version of the creative industries here, something which is born into your own specific social, economic, and cultural circumstances. So you should develop your own national creative economy. Look at what the others are doing, but keep on your own track. I think that you have all the national elements that you need. You have an abundance of creators. You have an enormous creative potential. You have most of the elements of the infrastructure. There seems to be a good legal basis for that. Of course, it can always be improved. You have also a policy commitment. We heard about structures that have been set up. You also have enough consumers of creative products. You just have to make them pay a little more. And it seems that I think that you have everything which is needed to turn the creative industry into something which everybody wants to come and enjoy together with you in Jamaica. I think that we discussed various elements that can help your creative industries to flourish and to develop. Many references were made today to the instrument of UNESCO. We spoke about various other forms, traditional cultural expressions, purely intellectual property protection models, and all of that. I believe that all of these should be used in the most appropriate way, and it is for you to decide which are the most practical tools which can indeed help individual creators to make a living. There are instruments which are important, however, they may not be as practical as others. So you should make a choice, where do we want to focus, really, and what do we want to use. Usually after such a conference, one would think of a follow-up. I think we've had a great atmosphere here, and this should not be lost. So let's think, Carol, how do we make the material from this conference available to all those who were not able to join in? And also how to follow up in the areas where there was a distinct interest of continuation. We had so many great sessions on evaluation. We had a session on games. We had a session on policies. This session is extraordinary. So clearly this needs to continue, and you don't need us for that. So you can continue some of these discussions here. Of course, we're happy to help with whatever we can, but I think that you have a great start and you just need to continue. So we have some work to do in terms of the follow-up. What comes next? How do we do it? When do we do it? What's the horizon? I must say that I will be leaving Jamaica really inspired. So thank you very much for your contribution. I'm very happy if you found this useful. That's what we're here for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dimitar. All right. Finally, we'll have Ms. Carol Simpson, Executive Director at JAIPO, to give the final remarks for this evening.
Thanks, Marissa. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, let me say in closing, I would really want to be very brief, but somehow you can't be brief when in closing there's so much that you really have to say. And really I must start by saying special thanks to Demeter, my friend and colleague of many years. We have been having this discussion in Jamaica, hosting such a conference for 2 years after I was invited to speak in Cali, Colombia at the Creative Industries Conference that was held there. And so I'm very pleased that finally, Demeter, we could make this happen. And I also want to thank my staff. And I would love for the staff to stand because literally Jaipur is closed. There are about 2 or 3 persons who are in office. And one of the things that may not have come out in such a conference is that for an agency as Jaipur that really works so hard to think out of the box, we try to embrace as many areas and issues that come at us. And Steve, I know, thinks that we are the solution because we are just really very practical in making things happen, that we are severely understaffed. And so that when you speak, please also speak to the need for resources that need to go into agencies like ours that are facilitating and servicing the creative industries sector. We certainly would want to do more. There were persons who did ask about other areas that we could have addressed on the program, and as Demeter said, there just wasn't time to have everything. We spent many months deliberating on the program and to see how much we could cover in the 3 days that we had. We also recognize that this was a regional conference, and I recognize my colleagues from the Caribbean region who are here also. And who I know really in speaking to me have benefited really from the discourse that we've had. Of course, I recognize that pretty much a lot of the examples that were given were of Jamaica. We were also said to be looking more at the music aspect of things, and Dorothy, I hope that eventually you saw that this was not deliberate at all. We recognize that this is what is prominent for Jamaica, it's what we're known for, local and international, and in every forum, no matter what the subject matter is, at some point, it will always be joined to music. We make no apologies for it. I think we must be proud. It is part of our culture, our heritage, and so we have to embrace it. One of my colleagues from the region said how spirited the discussions were and some points passionate. I said to him, this is all good. We loved it. This is what we want. We want to hear from you. We want to hear from our stakeholders. We're having a dialogue with you. Certainly, we're very pleased that we could embrace and work with Exim Bank. Exim reached out, thought out of the box with us, looking at a subject area that there really isn't a lot on it. And Demeter said to me that there's a publication coming out monetizing intellectual property, and certainly we will have a link of that on our website. And we will continue to work with Exim from the very beginning, maybe a year ago. They said, Jaipur, we'll work with you, we'll sponsor. And I really have to give Exim a big round of applause for that. So for the very first time, we also are looking at intellectual property, the asset, collateralization of IP, getting a loan from the bank, because there is now a law that is in place that we must now use this piece of legislation. I know there is resistance from bankers. They have said this. They don't quite understand how it will work. We will make it work. As creative people, we have to show them. Other countries have been doing this. This is nothing new for us. Maybe it's new in the region. Maybe Jamaica will have to lead the way in the region. But as a creative people, we must show that our creative assets, intangible as they are, can be used as collateral, and that the banks must at some point recognize this. So we seek your support in this discussion. And I know that as a people, we're anxious. We're anxious to see movements. We're anxious to see development. We're anxious to see that all the policies that we talk about, that they come to fruition, that there's an infrastructure, that there are programs that actually work. And certainly JIPA, from our perspective, we want to see these things happen. And we assure you that we certainly will be working with the other government entities and agencies and with our colleagues in the region to ensure that there is action moving forward. One of the good things is that there is a commission now established on creative industries within the Office of the Prime Minister. We hope that putting it at that level means that we can also give our input. In giving our input, so many ideas did come out of the discourse here. We'd love also to take some of those recommendations from you to the technical working group. At least JIPA is privileged that we sit at the table. In sitting at the table, it means our voice must be heard. And so we will represent you in that regard. One of the issues that came out also was looking at empirical evidence, study, and certainly through WIPO and through Dr. James, Vanus James, we now have the study, not only in Jamaica, but throughout the region, that looks at the contribution of copyright-based industries to our economy, which some of us feel that really in updating the study, we think that there is even a more significant contribution that had come out before. And so we'll be working with the statistical institutes, working with our colleagues, and hopefully we'll be able to, on an annual basis, train our own people so that we can gradually update the studies as well. We need to see a more formal approach to the creative industries if we're going to get funding, if we're going to have the kind of infrastructure that is needed. And in doing this, there has to be linkages. Linkages that will allow for easy sourcing. Well, I won't even use the word easy. I don't think anything really comes easy. So it's really being positive about how we get sources of financing from the private sector, partnering with the public sector as well. And from a regional perspective, I do believe that we now have a working group on traditional knowledge, traditional cultural expressions, looking at the possibility of a model law for the Caribbean, even as WIPO looks at the international treaty that could be completed. It is in its draft form now. So I think that one of the things we could recommend at the ministerial level is a creative industries working group that could be established. Jamaica will this year host the ministerial working group on intellectual property rights 2014. And so I am putting it to my colleagues that this is something that we could put forward as one of the areas that we could look at in establishing a creative industries working group, so that we can look at the critical next steps. We all have common issues, common goals, and so I think that this is very much possible. So much more to say, but I think that we've had a very long session, and a long 3 days. We've had full capacity house, and so really without you it would not have been possible. And so I really want to thank you. I think we have benefited from this. We speak of its success. We need to build on these successes and to improve our regional and our domestic situation. And so I only say that this is part one, and please listen out for part two and continue to give us your support. Thank you. Just to say that we continue tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, but these are closed sessions for the CMOs, collective management organizations of the region, that will be meeting as well. So we'll give you further information at our registration desk in terms of those persons who will be participating in those workshops. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Philippa, how are you? I'm waiting.